weil der Mensch ein Mensch ist, drum braucht er was zum Essen, bitte sehr. Es macht ihn ein Geschwätz nicht satt, das schafft kein Essen her.
Drum links, 2, 3, drum links, 2, 3, wo dein Platz genossen ist, weil ich ein in die Arbeit einheimst und weil du auch ein Arbeiter bist.
Und weil der Mensch ein Mensch ist, drum hat der Stiefel im Gesicht nicht gern. Er will unter sich keinen Sklaven sehen und über sich keinen Herrn.
Drum links, 2, 3, drum links, 2, 3, wo dein Platz genossen ist, weil ich ein in die Arbeiter einheimst und weil du auch ein Arbeiter bist.
Und weil der Prolet ein Prolet ist, drum wird ihn kein anderer befreien. Es kann die Befreiung der Arbeiter nur das Werk der Arbeiter sein.
Drum links, 2, 3, drum links, 2, 3, wo dein Platz genossen ist, weil ich ein in die Arbeiter einheimst und weil du auch ein Arbeiter bist.
Здравствуйте, comrades. Welcome to Socialism Saturday. Socialism Saturday is when we take some time out of our busy schedules to watch the real far left, the furthest of the far left, the most dystopian of the dystopian. We are not watching Democrats. We are not watching progressives. We are not even watching the Democratic Socialists of America because, contrary to what conservatives seem to believe, the Democratic Socialists of America are not the farthest of the far left. Who we watch on Socialism Saturday are the radical revolutionary socialists that are all over the country right now, that are responsible for every crazy thing you see going on in the world. If you want to know who pushed critical race theory into schools, the people we watch on Socialism Saturday did that. If you want to know who is pushing gender ideology into your school, who is transing and queering the kids to convince them to cut off perfectly good body parts before they're even old enough to vote, the people that we are watching on Socialism Saturday did that. If you want to know who's pushing Black Lives Matter, defunding the police, abolishing the police, it is these people. Every single crazy thing that you see happening in the world can be tracked directly back to people who are doing this right out in the open, in front of all of us. And what we do on Socialism Saturday is we listen to them. I know, it's a crazy idea, right? When your enemy is doing everything on the internet and putting all their plans on the internet, and literally all you have to do is to outsmart them is to sit your butts down for a couple hours every single week and listen to what they have to say. We're the only ones on the internet doing it, though. So I'll do it. Don't worry. I'll do it. Now, we've been watching Socialism Saturday for about a year and a half now. And prior to that, we were watching woke trainings, diversity training, classroom exercises, things like that. So I have now about 3 years coming up. It'll be 3 years in, I think, February. I have about 3 years under my belt of watching thousands of hours of the far left, of reverse engineering every single thing that they're doing. And I have many members of my community who have been on that ride with me, either the entire time or a significant portion of that time. And I truly believe that people who come to my Socialism Saturday streams my midweek streams as well to a lesser extent, but definitely my Socialism Saturday streams. I truly and sincerely believe that we know more about what the left is doing in this country than anyone else on the internet. We know more than the pundits. We know more than the commentators. We know more than James Lindsay does, which I found out for absolute certain this week. I already knew it theoretically, but I found out for certain this week. We know more than the Daily Wire does. We know more than Billboard Chris does. We know more than any of these effing people. Why? Because none of them actually listen to the boots on the ground activists. There is a big difference between reading the philosophy, which I do think is important, and I'm not diminishing the value of that. But there is a big difference between reading the philosophy and listening to the boots on the ground activists, because philosophy papers are written 100, 150 years ago by dead people. Who we listen to are the people out in the real world doing this stuff right now. And that's why we know more about what's going on the left than any other people on the internet. If you are new to our crazy cult-like environment, please feel free to introduce yourself to us and welcome. If you're new here, if you're new to me, this might be a little bit of an experience for you. It might be a little bit overwhelming, but I promise you, if you want to learn about what the left is doing, I will teach you. You may not always like me. I may make you cry on occasion, but if you want to learn what's going on, I will teach you better than anyone else on the internet that will. I will teach you how to speak their language. I will teach you how to break it down. I will teach you how to spot it in the real world. And all I need you to do is sit back and listen. So if you're new, please do introduce yourself in the chat. We like to welcome new people into our little community. Crowdfeather Media is new-ish. Thank you for joining us, Crowdfeather Media. Old Jim Bob could use a good cry. Oh, I've made many people cry, Jim Bob. I've made many people cry. But if I'm making you cry, it is done with love because I want you to learn. Consider me to be the Bobby fucking Knight of teaching people what's going on the far left, because ain't no one does it better than me. And I'll even make you cry along the way because that's just the way it works. Tommy says, I'm a right-wing streamer heavily trolled by leftist flying monkeys. Well, Tommy, that's interesting because I actually get trolled more by conservatives than I do by leftists. How funny is that? But welcome to our crazy cult, guys. Now, I will be going over the guide for Socialism Saturday in just a minute. Tiffanol over on Rumble says, if you knew Carlin does not lie, she presents as many facts to support what she said. If you want facts, look at her older shows. Oh yeah, guys, I've got receipts for literally years. I've got massive archives of receipts going on at this point. So I do appreciate folks watching on Rumble as well. Tayton says, I believe Nietzsche said, everyone is the unconscious exponent of a dead philosopher. Thank you, Tayton. I do appreciate the super chat. All right, guys, let me show you what we're watching this week. Now, I have to give a special shout out to SJ in my community because SJ was the one who pointed me to this video earlier on today. We were originally going to watch something different. And then SJ was like, Carlin, I found a crazy video for you featuring one of your favorite Abolish the Family activists. And I was like, oh. See, because I love it's the best Christmas present ever, guys. I love nothing more than when my community members come and gift me with far left socialism videos that they find on the internet, identifying great things for us to watch. So shout out SJ. We do appreciate it. Tonight, we're going to be watching a panel, and it's about an hour and a half long. So go get some drinks and some snacks. I've got a drink here that I'm going to show you guys in a minute. But this is a panel from the People's Forum NYC, and it's called Commune or Nothing. Communes against capitalism. Now, one of the questions that I'm asked all the time, because we know on Socialism Saturday that the number one enemy of the real left is not white people. They don't care if you're white. It's not men. They don't care what your gender is because they want to abolish all gender. It's not straight people. It's not Christians. It's not any of that. The number one enemy of the left is capitalism. And they define capitalism very, very specifically. So I need you to throw out what you believe capitalism is, because for our purposes here, it does not matter. The far left defines capitalism as private property ownership. Private property ownership. That is all we care about for the purpose of this. Because what we're trying to do on Socialism Saturday is understand how the left sees the world and understand why they're doing what they're doing and understanding what they're going to do next. And so it is paramount that we understand their definitions, their perspective above all else. Now, people on the conservative right, they refuse to talk about the fact that the number one enemy of the left is capitalism. And part of the reason they refuse to talk about it is because the left uses all sorts of coded language for capitalism. Basically, everything you hear about like whiteness, anti-racism, white supremacy, all of that means capitalism. Colonization means capitalism. There are all these other buzzwords, and we'll probably hear many of them tonight, are against capitalism, which they define specifically as private property. But yes, that's right, Grant. Fascism means capitalism. It means free market capitalism. And one of the questions, and by the way, thank you, Zachary, for becoming a member of my channel. I really do appreciate it. But I bring this up because I'm asked all the time when the left is using coded language for people. They say, Carlin, if the left means capitalism, why don't they just say capitalism? Well, they do. They do. They say capitalism all the time. And the reason I wanted to watch this presentation today, it is literally called Communes Against Capitalism. This is as overt as it can be, guys. So I don't want to hear anyone in the chat asking me, Carlin, if the left means capitalism, why don't they say capitalism? It's literally in the presentation title, okay? I can't get more overt than this. It is in the presentation title. I don't know why people cannot accept that this is the number one enemy of the left because they talk about it all the effing time. But that is what they're against. And so I'm sure we're going to hear a lot about that today. I'm really excited about it. I'm also really excited by this People's Forum channel in general because there's some crazy socialist stuff on this People's Forum thing. They've got a whole series of classes about Marx's Capital, which Capital is like one of Marx's seminal work that the socialists really love and obsess over because the number one enemy of the Marxists is capitalism. They still say imperialism too. They do say that every once in a while, which also, of course, means capitalism. Anyway, so we're going to get some good stuff off this channel in general. So SJ, we salute you. Thank you for providing this with us today. We're going to get into this panel in a second, and I will read the description when we get into it. Tiffanel says, Carlin, why did you call fascism the same as Well, okay, so I'll show you. So this is where, guys, so one of the things that I do and why we do Socialism Saturday is I view it as my job to help the conservatives specifically, everyone that wants to learn, but conservatives specifically because they're the ones that have the hardest goddamn heads. It is my job to help the conservatives decode what the left is doing because the conservatives don't know the left even half as well as they think they do. And so I show them in the left's own language what they mean. So Tiffanel over on Rumble says, Carlin, why did you call fascism the same as capitalism? I disagree with this. Fascism is what they're doing. Well, let's just take a look here. I'll show you exactly why. I'll show you exactly why I said that they define fascism as capitalism. Because, if my internet works, come on, because they've told us so. They have told us so. When was this? This was in August. In August of this year, we watched a presentation. We watched an Antifa conference at Hofstra University in which this socialist professor quite literally defined fascism as free market capitalism. So, remember, guys, remember, I do not care what your definition of these terms are. It makes no difference to me, and this hurts people's feelings, but I do not care what your personal definition of these terms are. I do not care what the dictionary says. I do not care about whatever history lesson you want to teach me. The only thing that I care about is how the left defines things. And so everyone's got to stop getting their ego like all in a fucking twist every time I tell you how the left defines these things based on videos in their own words, and you want to contradict them and debunk them. We're going to talk about the no debunking rule in a second, but our purpose here is to understand them. If you are not here to understand what they mean by these words, then this is not going to be the stream for you. I promise you that. So you need to reassess the debunking bullshit, because it's not going to work out here, and we're going to explain more about that in a second. But the reason that I say they define fascism as free market capitalism is I literally have them on video saying that they define fascism as free market capitalism. All right? So let's see. Now that I've already been distracted by someone trying to debunk me in my own chat, this is already good. You know, I'll talk more about that in a second. So guys, before we get into our presentation today, I do have a couple orders of business. Now, of course, I haven't been streaming the past several days this week. Well, I shouldn't say I haven't been streaming, because I have been streaming. Over the past 3 days, on Wednesday, Thursday, and Friday, I was streaming privately to the supporters I have in my community, the supporters on Substack, Locals, Patreon, Twitter, YouTube, channel membership, all those things. And we were infiltrating the National Sex Ed Conference. And we watched over 20 hours of presentations from the National Sex Ed Conference. And I got it all on tape, and I have all the files. And they tried to ban me 3 times. No, they tried to ban me twice. I'm sorry. They only tried to ban me twice. They tried to ban me on the first day. It didn't work. They tried to ban me on the second day. It didn't work. They actually did get me on the third day, but it was already too late because I had already downloaded all their files. So there wasn't anything that I really needed anymore. Anyway, the reason I bring this up is that I am going to be dripping out the things that we heard at the National Sex Ed Conference this week on my Substack, which is Carlyn, KARLYN.substack.com. And I highly recommend that everyone make sure they are subscribed to my Substack. You can subscribe for free, of course, but you're going to get access to all of the content with a premium membership of $8 a month or $80 a year. I will show you things that no one else is covering on the internet. I will show you things you are not going to see anywhere else. I will break them down for you. I will make clips for you. You will get access to special events. Like, the only people that were with me for those 20 hours that we were streaming the National Sex Ed Conference live was people who support my work, because that just makes it easier for me. It's a nice little perk that they get to do research for me, or not for me, with me. Sometimes they do research for me too, which is kind of cool. We have a whole little research community. And so we have that on the channel. If you want to catch the back episodes, you can find that on the Substack right now. You can get access over there. And I will be dripping out content from the conference all week. And I got to tell you guys, there was some pretty crazy things that they said at this conference. I've already posted one story, which is they literally said that parents do not have rights when it comes to their kids' sex education at this conference. They said that parents are sharing rights with the government and their kids' teachers. And so I already have that clip up, and you can find that, but there's a lot more coming. We're going to start dripping that out tomorrow. And so if you want to get access to that and to support the work I'm doing, please do make sure you are signed up for a paid subscription on my Substack, $8 a month, $80 a year. And guys, I am completely 100% grassroots funded. The National Sex Ed Conference infiltration was funded by you. If you do not sign up and support my work, if you value it, then there ain't gonna be any more infiltrations, because all this stuff costs money, and I can only do as much as I have resources to play with. I am trying to get 100 new paid supporters on my Substack by the end of the year. And that's going to fund stuff that I'm going to do next year. And so if you appreciate what I'm doing, if you want to see more, if you want to get access to all the good stuff behind the scenes, then become a paying member on my Substack. That is the place that I prefer people support my work. You can also support me on Locals, on Patreon, on Twitter subscriptions, YouTube channel membership. All that's fine, and I appreciate all of it. But Substack is where I'm really trying to grow. Substack is where I'm trying to get 100 new paid supporters by the end of the year. And the paid supporters will be funding the infiltrations and all the stuff that we're doing next year, which of course I'm already starting to think about. Can't even take a vacation, but that's the way it goes. So I do appreciate that, guys. Another way you can support my work is by heading over to the Unwoke Art store, which is unwokeart.com. Let me put that in the chat. And I'm doing a daily special on unwokeart.com. And today we're doing 25% off one of my most popular designs ever, the Trump Indictment Victory Tour t-shirt, which not only has Trump giving the victory signal on the front, but it has every single Trump indictment on the back. This is inspired by concert t-shirts. And I made a Trump Indictment Victory Tour t-shirt out of it. And guess what, guys? You can even get it on wrapping paper. Just for that Trump deranged person in your life, you can give them a present with the wrapping paper with Trump giving the victory signals. So yeah, yes. So they tried to ban you despite partially funding their board meeting. How did they justify that? They justified it by refunding my money. But what was funny about that is so when the National Sex Ed Conference tried to ban me, I already had a backup plan anyway, so it didn't work. And so basically they refunded my $500 and I still got everything I wanted anyway. So I thought that was pretty great. Anyway, guys, you can also check out all the other stuff I've got over on the Unwoke Art website. We've got all sorts of cool collections with dystopian movie posters. We've got the All Tears Are Tasty line. We've got the Real Marxism line. This is actually my favorite line of all of them right now. It looks so cool in person. We've got the We're All Mad Here, Mad Hatter stuff, the Be Different stuff, the Be Bourgeois stuff, Follow the White Rabbit. We've got Javier Milei. We've got the Megalomaniac stuff. We've got all sorts of great stuff over in the Unwoke Art store. So go check it out. Still plenty of time to get Christmas gifts. And again, you will get 25% off the Trump Indictment Victory Tour t-shirt for, well, all the designs that have it for one day only. And then tomorrow I'm doing another special 25% off. I'm not going to tell you what it is because I don't know yet, but there will be something for 25% off tomorrow. And then, it's all downhill from there, guys. So that's another way you can fund the work I'm doing. And of course, I really do appreciate it. All right. Before we get into the presentation, I need to go over the guide. Now, this might seem excessive, but there are some things that we need to talk about in regards to Socialism Saturday, because I want to make sure that everyone is on the same page for what we're doing here. I consider Socialism Saturday to be a class, okay? I am teaching a class. Yes, we have fun. Yes, we joke around. Yes, we try to make it fun to understand socialism and watch socialism and all that stuff. But I don't want people to be confused by this. If you are not here to learn, this is not going to be the stream for you, okay? So the reason that we do Socialism Saturday is that socialists speak in coded language. They may use the same vocabulary as you. They do not use the same definitions of you. The purpose of Socialism Saturday is not to debunk them. If our purpose was to debunk them, then we would spend literally the entire stream debunking them and 0% of the stream listening to what they have to say. Our purpose here is to understand them, to understand their definitions of the language. Just because you understand someone does not mean you have to agree with them. So I'm going to ask people to refrain from debunking them, because when people spend all of their time debunking them, it distracts from people understanding them, okay? I don't care what the proper definition is. I care what they believe it is, because these people are winning. They are winning dramatically. They are kicking everyone's ass. And the fact that they have the quote unquote improper definitions of things doesn't seem to be stopping them. If debunking them was all that was required to defeat them, they would have been defeated a long ass time ago. But they're winning. And there's the reason for that, because debunking them doesn't work, okay? Number 3, if you do have questions, especially for people who are new, I want to encourage everyone to ask questions. The purpose of this is to ask questions. I will answer any question that I see that is asked in good faith, okay? I keep an eye on the Rumble chat. I keep an eye on the YouTube chat. So if you have questions, chat them in. Either I will answer them or someone else in the chat will answer them, and we'll do our very best to make sure you have the answers that you need. However, if you are a longtime viewer of my content, and I know who my longtime viewers are, and you are asking the same question over and over and over and over and over again, at some point, I'm going to have higher expectations of you. And at some point, I'm going to get sick of repeating myself. Because the fact is, guys, that I am now in a position where I have to repeat the same thing every single day, ad nauseum, every single day of my life. I feel like I'm in an episode of Groundhog's Day. I feel like I'm getting up, saying the same thing, going to sleep, getting up, saying the same thing, going to sleep every single day of my life. And I don't mind doing that for people who legitimately are new and are asking honest questions. I do mind doing that when the same person is asking the same question over and over and over again because they don't like the answer that I'm giving them, okay? So I have high expectations. I think part of the problem with our society right now is that people have low expectations, not only of themselves, but of other people. I don't believe people are stupid. I believe that everyone here can learn this if they want to learn it, but I can't force you to listen, and I can't force you to open your ears, and I can't force you to take in the content. You have to do that, but don't expect me to coddle your feelings if you are not listening and then repeating the same stuff over and over and over again, because at some point I'm going to tell you to stop, and I might not do it in a way that you like, okay? Number 4, normal chat rules apply. I have 2 rules in my chat. Number 1, don't be a dick. Do not insult me. Do not insult other people in the chat. I can do whatever I want because you're in my house. You are a guest in my house. You are a member of my class. So I can say whatever I want. And if you don't like it, you can leave and go and avail yourself of everyone else on the internet doing this stuff. Oh, wait, I'm the only person on the internet doing this. So I'm your one option. You either play by my rules or you don't play at all, and that's just the way it goes. Number 2, no whining. If I ask you to stop doing something, there is a reason I've asked you to stop doing it, and I just expect you to stop doing it. I don't want to hear whining. I don't want to hear complaining. I don't want to hear, I'm not doing that thing you said to stop doing, because you are doing the thing I told you to stop doing. If you weren't doing it, I wouldn't have asked you to stop doing it in the first place. So no whining, just stop. That's all it is. Lastly, do not argue with me. I understand that people do not like it when I tell them they are wrong. What you need to understand is the reason I'm telling you you're wrong is because I have watched thousands of hours of this material. I know it better than any conservative influencer on the internet, to include your favorite influencers. And a lot of you have been misinformed by your favorite people on the internet who don't know this stuff half as well as we know it. If I am telling you that you are wrong, it is because you're wrong. If you try to argue with me, I promise you that's not going to go well for you. Every once in a while, every blue moon, someone comes in and tries to argue with me and makes a fair point, and I'll acknowledge if a fair point is made. But the vast majority of the time, when people come in and they try to argue with me, it doesn't go well for them. So you better really be sure that you've got me if you're going to try to argue with me, because it might not go the way you think it is. And it's not because I'm being mean. Again, it's because I know more about this than almost anyone else on the internet, and I'm trying to make sure you know what you're talking about too, so that you can become more aware of what's going on in the world. All right, the last thing I'm going to say is this. I have decided to offer a general amnesty for a lot of people that I have blocked over the last year. The reason is that I had someone that came to the National Sex Ed Conference stream who I blocked on my main channel, but I wasn't streaming the National Sex Ed Conference stream on my main channel. And he showed up, and it was obvious that he was paying attention to Socialism Saturday. And it was obvious that he was learning, even though I had blocked him on my main channel. So I wanted to welcome him back, And the only way that I could do that was by unblocking a whole bunch of people on my channel. And so I've decided to offer a general amnesty for people, most people, not all, because there are some people that are absolutely still staying blocked. But for the most people that I blocked on my channel. Now, what this means is that we might have some people showing up on the channel that haven't been here before. Sometimes maybe they're going to try to cause problems. The same rules apply. If the people that I'm offering a general amnesty to show up and they're causing problems, then we're just going to block them again and move on. But I do believe that there are some people who maybe learned a little bit of a lesson by being blocked, who still showed up anyway, and who were still learning. And I want to welcome those people back in, and I want to make sure that they have the opportunity to work with us. Now, I haven't done this for everyone yet because it's a giant pain in the ass to do. YouTube doesn't make it easy to do this. I actually have to go in and manually unblock people, and it's a giant task, but I have done a lot of people. I'm going to be working on it. If you aren't unblocked yet, you probably will be before the end of the year. I asked you to just be patient, and that's just going to be the way it goes. Well, Autumn had at least 15 accounts blocked, and so maybe, I'm not even sure, maybe some of them. But again, guys, if they show up and they cause trouble again, then they're just going to get blocked again, and that's going to be the way it is. But for people who want to be here, I wanted them to have a chance to be here, and that's where the way it's going. Okay. Let's get into our discussion. Oh, by the way, I'm not drinking beer tonight. I wanted to let everyone know. I am not drinking beer tonight. Oh no, what's in this glass? Oh no. I didn't pick a good glass, I don't think. But I am drinking champagne because of our victory at the National Sex Ed Conference. 3-day conference infiltration. So I'm not drinking beer. I'm drinking champagne. Also, I had it left over from Thanksgiving. So cheers, everyone. Cheers to us. We did it. It's a big glass. We'll let that settle. Victor told me this glass was clean, and now I'm not so sure it's clean. But whatever, I'm going to drink out of it anyway. Cheers, everyone. Congratulations to us. We did it. Lovely. All right, guys, let's get started with our presentation. 40 minutes into the stream, we're getting started. All right, everyone, I need everyone to mount that like button for me if you have not already. We are watching a presentation called Commune or Nothing, Communes Against Capitalism. This was 2 days ago. 2 days ago, so brand new presentation. This virtual panel will examine the commune and communal organizing as part of the project of revolutionary social transformation. The speakers address how socialist communes can be used to abolish capitalism's logic based on the exploitation of the human being and the expropriation of nature, along with a range of oppressions, including racial, gender, sexual, and colonial oppression, and in a capitalist society. They list the speakers, Of course, our favorite speaker is going to be Emmy O'Brien. Emmy O'Brien is one of our favorite abolish the family activists. Emmy O'Brien is the author of Family Abolition, Capitalism, and the Communizing of Care, and the co-author of Everything for Everyone, an Oral History of the New York Commune, 2052 through 2072. All right, guys, so this is what we're watching today. Everyone, mount the like button for me. Thank you for coming to Socialism Saturday. Let's get our socialism on, folks. Maybe I need to fast forward. Maybe I need to fast forward a little bit. They could at least give us some hold music or something. What the hell?
Hi, everyone. Thank you so much for joining us. My name is Kate Gonzalez. I work at the People's Forum as an editor for 1804 Books. If you haven't heard of us before, we are a political, cultural community education center based in New York City, but of course we host virtual events as you are tuning in tonight. So we invite you all to take part in the program we've got. We've got online courses, we have movie screenings. We're invested in educating people about working class struggles all over the world and how we can liberate ourselves everywhere. And in that vein, that is why we're very excited to be partnering with Monthly Review for tonight's book talk, Communes or Nothing, Communes Against Capitalism. And, as people who are invested in study, we're not just reading books to learn more and think, oh, that's so interesting. We're trying to build a better world for ourselves and for everyone so that we can all live full, dignified lives. And communes are one way of imagining a world outside of capitalism, imagining an alternative where people can care for each other in new ways that aren't linked to profit, that aren't linked to the destruction of the world. Before I hand it off to Sierra and all of the...
Did you hear what she just said? So, socialists believe, for people who are new, I do a lot of pop quizzes throughout the presentation so that people can really learn what socialists believe and stuff like that. And how I teach is I make sure you learn through repetition and drilling and stuff like that. So what did she just say? She just basically said that socialists believe that capitalism is going to cause the destruction of the world. That's because socialists quite literally believe that all problems in the world are caused by capitalism. Pop quiz for the chat. Why do socialists believe that capitalism caused all the problems in the world? From racism to the patriarchy to climate change to colonization and imperialism. Why do socialists believe that capitalism caused all of the problems in the world? Yup. Because they're profit focused. Tell me more. Because of greed. Yup. Because of capitalism's profit motive. Exactly. Because they believe that capitalism creates inequality or inequity. Inequity would be a better word. Because of greed. Here we go. Rottweiler, because capitalism perpetuates inequality through the power structures they see as enemy, family, institutions, profit. Close. Because profit and production are more important than people in the world. That's exactly right. That's exactly right, Sin. Well done. They think it's the root of all evil, focuses on individuals and not the community. The profit motive makes people greedy and it creates disparity. Exactly. So essentially, take something like climate change, okay? Because socialists do believe that capitalism, which they define as private property ownership, caused climate change. And socialists also believe that if we wiped out capitalism, if we just abolished capitalism, which means abolishing all private property, then we would instantly fix all the world's problems. So they believe that capitalist businesses, the bourgeois class, and their capitalist businesses put their motive to make money and profit and greed above taking care of the earth. And therefore, they made business decisions that involved the destruction of environmental resources that ended up causing climate change because greed and money was more important to them than taking care of the earth. And the same thing is true of like any other problem. It's like the profit motive made people make decisions that were inherently bad and detrimental for the greater collective, and they did it to make money. That's why they want to abolish capitalism. That's why they want to abolish private property. And that's why they believe that capitalism is the great evil in the world that caused all the world's problems. Let's just listen to that one part again, and then we'll move on.
Dignified lives. And communes are one way of imagining a world outside of capitalism, imagining an alternative where people can care for each other in new ways that aren't linked to profit, that aren't linked to the destruction of the world.
Ding.
Before I hand it off to Sierra and all of the amazing panelists we have today, I just want to give a quick pitch for an ongoing campaign we have called Shut It Down for Palestine. It is an amazing resource for people all across the country who want to get involved, who want to hit the streets to protest against the terrible atrocities we're seeing unfold at the hands of the Zionist state of Israel and backed by the US and of all of the other Western empires. So even if you are in New York, we have an action tomorrow at 3 p.m. at Foley Square. I should have checked that before, but I believe it's 3 p.m. at Foley Square. But even if I'm incorrect, you can double check me at shutitdownforpalestine.org. And if you're not in New York, it's going to have actions happening all across the country. So we hope you get engaged. We hope you get involved and help us build a better world for everybody else. And I mean that in a really concrete sense. I'll pass it over to Sierra, who will take us away for the rest of the event. But thank you everyone for joining us tonight. And thank you to all of the panelists, and thank you to Monthly Review.
Thank you, Kate. Thank you so much to the People's Forum and, of course, to Monthly Review, which organized this event, Commune or Nothing, Communes Against Capitalism. Basically, tonight we are going to examine the commune and communal organizing as part of the project for revolutionary transition. And thank you also to our speakers, to our panelists tonight. We have Kali Akuno, Bellamy Foster, Chris Gilbert, and Amy O'Brien. I am Cira Pascual Marquina. I'm part of the Venezuelan analysis team, and I'm also a teacher at the Pluriversidad, which is El Panal Commune's educational initiative. I will talk briefly about our theme because, of course, we are here to hear about from our panelists. But basically, our objective is to learn about the commune from both a theoretical and a practical perspective, right? So how we trace a path to be collectively emancipated, how we put the commune back into communism, that would be also one of our objectives. And so the speakers will address how communes can be used.
Hang on, we have a question from Old Jim Bob. Old Jim Bob is new to us, so we're all gonna welcome him. Are any of these people in the forum in positions or of influence or decision making? Yes, but not in the way you think. Because the way that the left gains power is through institutional power. So what they do is they get themselves into positions at universities, they get themselves into positions in governmental organizations, they get themselves into positions of like anywhere where they can make decisions to influence policy and structure. I recently wrote an essay on my Substack, carlin.substack.com, that explains how the left makes decisions, who leads the left, how they coordinate with each other. And so essentially the right thinks of the conservative right thinks of things in terms of like a hierarchy where there's one leader at the top and then there's all sorts of people who are following the decisions of the leader. That's not how these people think. These people are collectivists. Are they influential? They control every major institution in our country. They control the colleges and universities. They control the K through 12 schools. They control media. They control Hollywood. They control absolutely everything. So are they in positions of influence? Absolutely, but not in the way you think they are. And I would recommend heading over to my Substack and reading the latest article in the Woke Mind series if you want to understand why that is.
Used to abolish the capitalist logic, which is based, of course, on exploitation of the human beings and expropriation of nature. And also we will look at the commune as a mechanism to...
Did you just hear what she said? They want to abolish the capitalist logic, which is based on the expropriation of human beings and the something of nature, basically like basically destroying nature. Let's listen again.
That would be also one of our objectives. And so the speakers will address how communes can be used to abolish the capitalist logic, which is based, of course, on exploitation of the human beings and expropriation of nature. And also we will look at the commune as a mechanism to overcome the range of oppressions that exist in a capitalist society, including racial, gender, sexual, and colonial. The talk is called Commune or Nothing, Comuna or Nada, precisely because recently Chris Gilbert, who is among our panelists, he recently published a book with Monthly Review by that name. Commune or Nothing is a reference to Chavez's
Hang on.
2012.
Stuff like this is not helpful, guys. This is why I ask you not to do this. Why are these people so ignorant? Well, if they were so ignorant, they wouldn't be winning, and they are winning. So perhaps we should stop calling them stupid and ignorant. Because if you're going to call them stupid and ignorant, what does it say about you that you're losing so colossally to these people, man? It really doesn't. It's not a good look when you're losing really badly to stupid, ignorant people, okay? They believe, and they do genuinely believe this, that real socialism has never been tried. Real communism has never been tried. No, they are not going to leave America and move to Venezuela. The point of doing this is to do it in America, because if they can do it here, they can do it anywhere. And so they aren't going to leave here and go live in a communist country. They are going to try to implement it here. They really do believe they're going to do it right this time. They believe they've learned from the mistakes of the past, and they aren't going to make the same mistakes again. They've written entire books about this. So we can hopefully put this to bed, and we won't talk about it for the entire rest of the presentation.
In 2012, Chavez, after already having proposed the commune in 2009 as the strategic objective of the Bolivarian Revolution, in 2012, in his last political testament, he said commune or nothing. Basically, he was calling upon us and the people of Venezuela and possibly the world to the commune is an imperative. So that's what we will, that's what kind of like moves us to meeting here today and debating. I invite all of you to look for the book on the monthly review site, and of course the books of all the other panelists. I will be introducing each of the panelists one by one, and I will give each of them a 10-minute, each person will more or less make a 10-minute intervention. So without further ado, we are going to move on to Bellamy Foster. He is a monthly review editor. He's the author of many books. A recent book that is actually quite relevant is Capitalism in the Anthropocene, Ecological Ruin and Ecological Revolution. And this book is actually relevant to our talks, as we will see. It's interesting that in 2011, John traveled with Mesados to Caracas to meet with Chavez, and Mesados was super important for Chavez. He really influenced Chavez in his conception of the commune. So I will start with some kind of like questions for John. John, you have talked about the possibility of communion age following the Capitolinian age. So what motivates you with that term, to use that term, right? And more importantly, what are the main features of the society of the communion age? What would be the relationship of human beings with non-human nature, or what you call the wider community? How would the ecological crisis be addressed in this new society? And well, where do we see some seeds for this future communal society? Thank you, John, again.
You're muted, John. You're muted.
John, I think you are muted.
Socialists suck at technology.
The Anthropocene, of course, is our major problem because we're facing the possible extinction of humanity, and certainly it threatens an existential crisis for all of humanity. Hundreds of millions and billions of people threatened. And so everything we do has to be related to that. And the Anthropocene has generated a controversy over whether we should call it the Anthropocene, whether we should call it the Capitalocene or something else. Of course, scientists have decided on the notion of the Anthropocene because for the first time in the history of the Earth, a species, humanity is, well, the first time human species is becoming the driver of the entire Earth system. And this is a fundamental change that began in the 1950s. But if we recognize that we're in this predicament, there's the question of what is the first age of the Anthropocene, because every geological epoch has an age that is attached to it. Actually, usually 3 ages. So Carl Soriano, and at the same time, virtually the same time, Brett Clark and myself designated the first age of the Anthropocene as the Capitolian or Capitolinian. But then there's the question of what comes after, because we're going to remain in a situation where we control the destiny of the planet to some extent. That is, we control our own destiny. We either drive ourselves into extinction or not. And as long as industrial civilization survives, we will be in that position. So the Capitolian represents the age dominated by capitalism and a destructive relation to the earth.
What?
And we've argued that by around 2050, we have to be creating a different relation to the earth, the Communian.
That's funny. So, about a month ago, I wrote a piece on my Substack where I laid out the timeline for what I think the Marxist takeover of the United States is. And I did a stream about it as well. I think I posted a clip on my channel. And this isn't based in nothing. This is actually based in looking at when they came here, the progress they've made so far, the progressions that they're making, there's a whole logic behind this that I'm not going to go into now. But suffice it to say, in that piece, I said, I think we are going to hit the Marxist utopia in the United States by 2050. I think that's the target. And I feel pretty solid about that. I don't feel good about it because I think it's going to suck. But I think that's what I think by 2050 at the latest, we're going to be in the Marxist utopia. He just said 2050. Emmy O'Brien, who's also going to be on this presentation, wrote a fictional story about the Marxist revolution in the United States that was published as a book called Everything for Everyone. Do you know what year Emmy O'Brien's book starts in? Do you know when the Marxist revolution is concluded and that book starts? 2052. So all signs, this is not going to happen too soon. Not going to happen for reasons that I've already laid out and explained elsewhere. And guys, people who are saying this, you guys haven't really thought this through with all of the change that needs to take place. Change is not a fast thing. Change is a slow thing. Okay, there is no possible way it's going to happen by 2030. No possible way. But by 2050, there's a lot of things that can happen by 2050 that make it more possible. So isn't it a coincidence that I think it's going to happen by 2050? This guy is saying 2050. Emmy O'Brien is saying 2050. I mean, I don't like being right about this one, Kristen. I don't like it, but thank you. Appreciate it. I'll take my capitalism while I still can.
Clark and I have argued, in which we create a sustainable relation to the earth. But that's only possible if we have communal social relations. We can only create a...
Hang on. Thank you, Crowd Feather Media, for becoming a member of the channel. I really do appreciate it.
community with the earth, sustainable human development, if we also have a society of substantive equality, what Meseros called substantive equality. Substantive equality and ecological sustainability come together, and they're only possible in a society and a geological age where we have a more communal relation to the earth. But it's no accident that we chose the term communion to talk about what has to exist ecologically if we're going to have a sustainable relation to the planet, because that goes back to Marx. Marx and Engels basically saw socialism in...
Hang on, I got a super chat coming in from Queen Beth. Queen says, "Thanks for being, for being right about Constantine." Yeah. See, guys, what happened is a too long didn't read. Is the trigonometry guys think they know what I'm working on, but they really have no idea. Instead, they just like to spread rumors about me, like Carlin only ever gets into fights with people on the internet, which isn't actually the truth, but they refuse to look at what I'm actually working on, and they refuse to take any of this in because they think they know, but they have no idea. And I proved that this week when I tried to tell Constantine directly about what I'm working on. And let's just say he expressed very little interest in what I'm actually working on. He was fully committed to Carlin just gets in fights with people on Twitter and refused to look at what I'm actually doing. And I'm really sorry when I'm right about this, guys, because I know a lot of you guys want to see me go on these shows, but these shows are not interested because they have no fucking idea what I'm doing. They refuse to look at what I'm doing. All they're interested in is maintaining their clique and keeping their clique happy because their clique is the thing that gives them status. And I'm really sorry, guys. I wish I could change influencers on the internet. I just can't. And so I'm going to focus on who wants to be here and who wants to learn. And that's all I can really do. But thank you, Queen Beth. It made me very sad too, because I thought that Constantine was better than that. But apparently not. Apparently not. Tolkien fan, thank you for becoming a member of the channel. I really do appreciate it. Yeah, there's more to that story. I'll tell that story another time.
Terms of communal relations, and they saw that more and more as their work developed. And so they talked constantly about communal relations, communal exchange, particularly in the Grundrisse, about communes, community. This is the direct.
Okay, so people want to hear okay, quickly I'll tell the trigonometry story. Okay. I was on trigonometry in 2020 when I first got thrown into this whole We're to do this quick. I'm sorry, guys, but people want to know. Fine, whatever. I was on trigonometry in 2020 when I just got thrown into this whole space. I had no idea what was going on. They talked to me about organizational psychology, and that was pretty much what they talked to me about. You can go back and watch the episode. Recently, a lot of people on my channel have been asking, like, why aren't you going on these shows? Why aren't you going on these shows? And I'm like, well, they aren't interested in what I'm doing. And so Queen Beth got on to a stream with them, with the trigonometry guys, where Beth asked them directly, have you looked at what Carlin is doing lately? And apparently they were really dismissive of her and said something to the effect of, we know what Carlin's doing. She's been on our show before. And it's kind of like, I know they don't know what I'm doing. Beth knows they don't know what I'm doing. They have no clue about what's going on at all. And then they said to Beth something to the effect of like, well, you know, we just think that she gets into a lot of fights on Twitter and stuff like that, which is bullshit if you actually look at my content, but that's the rumor that they want to perpetuate. And so I found out about this after it happened, and I DM'd Constantine, and I said to Constantine, I was so nice about it. I said, listen, I heard you said this thing. I just want to make sure you know what I'm working on. So I sent Constantine this list I made of like my top 24 stories that I had done in 2024, all of the exclusive reporting, all of the investigative journalism, the undercover stuff. It was all in this one place. It was in this one list. I sent it to him. I said, I just want to make sure you know what I'm working on. Constantine replied, and I have the DMs. I can show them to people. I'm not going to show, I don't feel good about showing private messages, but I could if I needed to. Constantine replied something to the effect of, well, Carlin, I just think you get into a lot of fights on Twitter. And I said to him, I said, well, I think it's a real shame. Oh, I meant 2023. Sorry, Reagan. I meant 2023. Anyway, you guys know what I meant. And so I replied after Constantine was like, well, Carlin, you just get into a lot of fights on Twitter. I replied, well, Constantine, I think it's a bit of a shame that you guys, that me defending myself when I'm attacked by people seems to overshadow the stuff that I'm doing that is light years ahead of anyone else. So if you don't want to know what I'm working on, My mistake in reaching out to you, but now you have the list of what I'm working on if you want to know. And he never responded. And so my assumption at this point is that the trigonometry guys are just completely uninterested. They don't want to know. He refused to click on a fucking link and look at it. I'm really sorry. I really am. But I knew that was the case already. And I tried to tell you guys that this was what was going on, because I'm not in their clique. I don't support their narrative. They can't control what I say. They can't control the positions I make. And so they refuse to look at what I'm doing. They refuse to acknowledge it. They won't even consider it. So it is what it is, guys. That's why it's so important. I need people like you guys to share my work out with your friends, your family, your community, because the big time influencers that you guys all want to see me talking to don't give a flying F. They don't care. They care about maintaining their money and maintaining their status, and that is it. And I'm really sorry. I wish that wasn't the case, but that's where we are. So if you guys want to change that, there's nothing I can do about it. I mean, I would say share my stuff out with your friends, share it out with your family, share it out with your communities. If you guys want these guys to take another look at my work, then you message them and harangue them about it until they do it. I don't think it'll work, but if you want them to look at what I'm doing, then message them, DM them, harangue them until they fucking do it, because it's going to mean nothing coming from me. It might mean something coming from you guys, but it's going to mean nothing coming from me. Anyway, so that's what happened. Let's move on.
That socialism had to go in the classical Marxist conception. So we were building on that, but also on the work of Istvan Meszaros, particularly his Beyond Capital. And Meszaros argued that we had to create a communal system. He had his fundamental chapter, which influenced Chavez enormously, was called the communal system and the law of value. And of course, it's the most difficult chapter in the book, but it emphasizes the need to create socialism around communal relations, around communal exchange, and to reject the law of value of capitalism. And that means that the relations have to be oriented in terms of time, in terms of activities, in terms of...
Hang on, I got a super chat from Jenny. Thank you for the super chat. Thanks for letting us know. Wasn't expecting you to tell us right now, but appreciate it. Just proves why our support of your work is so important. That's right, guys. I'm never going to be supported by the influencers. Most of them are not smart enough to understand what I'm doing, but you guys are here and you guys understand. And so let's build off that. That's the only thing that's ever made me successful anyway, is appealing to normal people. Like, fuck the influencers. If they don't want to know, they don't have to know. I am perfectly fine every single day looking smarter than the influencers. But I appreciate you guys. Thank you.
Of communal needs in terms of use values. Basically, the notion of communal exchange in a communal society has a whole different notion of exchange and production, in which communal needs are the priority, and what we exchange are activities and use values, and we exchange time. We distribute disposable time on a collective communal basis, and so on. And so it ends up being a fundamentally different system than capitalism. As Chris Gilbert explains in his book, it's a system where decisions are not made ex post by the mediation of the market, but they're made ex ante through communal planning and organization, addressing needs directly. Now, Meszaros' analysis was built around the notion of social metabolic reproduction, which he took from Marx's notion of social metabolism as it was used in the Grundrisse. And the idea was that that the system of capital is not to be understood as a simplistic relation between labor and capital, but you have to look at as entire organic system with interconnections. If you just focus on one connection, you're going to fail. You have to create the entire system of reproduction. And that was articulated by Chavez based on Mézières most succinctly in terms of the elementary triangle of socialism, which meant, consisted of first social ownership, second social organization of production by workers, and third satisfaction of communal needs. And if you dealt with all these different areas simultaneously, you would be able to create a communal system that had a social metabolic reproduction that was antithetical to capitalism and that represented a system of sustainable human development. And so Mézières, rather abstractly and philosophically, developed these ideas, and Chavez started putting them into practice and giving them a more political significance. And I was part of the conversation.
I love that this guy is holding up like Hugo Chavez as like the great world communist leader. Like, bro.
At the time, I spent a lot of time with Mézières, and we communicated a lot. And of course, Mézières was spending time with Chavez. In 2011, I went to Venezuela because I was invited by the government. Chavez was going to, immediately after the election, he was going to push for the communes in a big way. And that was the agenda at the meeting. It was a small group of intellectuals with the government, and Chavez was setting the agenda. Except when I arrived, he was on television, and as he was walking over to join us, he had his first collapse, and so he wasn't present at that meeting. And we went over a lot of it and understood what the.
Yes, Sin. Yes. Hugo Chavez ruined Venezuela's economy. Yes. Yes. Indeed. Yep. This is their hero. Indeed.
The project was, but it wasn't until later on when he was, when at the very end of his life, in his very last.
Hang on, I'm going to answer this. Carlin, will the socialists address the idea of depopulation as a means to maintain ecological balance? No. No, they won't. Because, guys, the people that we're watching are radical revolutionary socialists. Radical revolutionary socialists are not, I repeat, are not the same as the WEF Malthusians. It is the WEF Malthusians who are obsessed with depopulation. The radical revolutionary socialists rarely, if ever, talk about depopulation. In fact, they are more afraid that the right is going to engage in eugenics than they are proponents of depopulation. They don't talk about it. They don't lecture about it. They don't write books about it. They don't do any of those things. You have to see these groups as two different things. So no, we will likely not hear one single peep about depopulation in this entire stream, because this is not a topic that the radical revolutionary socialists talk about. It is the WEF Malthusians that talk about that. These are two different groups.
Speech, the El Golpe speech, that he raised the issue front and center, insisted that it was commune or nothing, which is the subject of Chris's book. So this is, a complex analysis. What I think is important to understand is that Chavez was a major theorist as well as a politician, and he was working with one of the major, I would say, the leading Marxist philosopher at this part of the late 20th, early 21st century, István Mészáros, and they were delving deeply into the whole Marxist tradition in order to create an alternative, a new path to socialism based on the communal state, as it was called at one point, and then the commune, the whole notion of building the communes. And I thought that this was the most pioneering, really successful attempt to introduce a new path to socialism in our time that wasn't simply applicable to Venezuela, but applicable to struggles for socialism everywhere. That this, of course, every country has its own vernacular traditions, its own paths. The conditions differ, but I came to believe that the Bolivarian emphasis on the communal state and the communes was a radically different path to socialism, and really closer to what our ultimate goals should be, and a new strategy that really works in all sorts of ways. Of course, Venezuela has not been free to introduce this strategy as it would have liked. First, Chavez died, and the whole country came under the hybrid warfare of the United States, and yet, as Chris explains in his book, that made the communes even more important, and it meant that they represented a revolutionary strategy which could go forward in these conditions. And I want to just end with a principle that Mészáros always emphasized, and Chavez too, that the revolution has to be made irreversible in order to succeed. And the only way you can make it irreversible is to base it in the people themselves and their communal needs and activities. Thank you.
Thank you so much, John. It is indeed extraordinary to live in Venezuela and to see communes as they take shape. So it's great to hear your reflections and also from your experience with Mészáros. Next, we go to Emmy O'Brien.
Oh, yay.
She's author of Family Abolition, Capitalism, and the Communizing of Care.
Communizing.
She's also the co-author of Everything for Everyone, an oral history of the New York Commune, 2052 to 2072. And she has reflected extensively on these issues. So thank you, Michelle, for being here with us. In Everything for Everyone, it depicts the emergence of a new society based on communes and that emerge following a series of disasters and wars, right? And in your work, in your other work, on family abolition, you posit the commune as an alternative to social reproduction unit that will substitute the family, right? So, why did you focus on social reproduction rather than production, which would have been the most common Marxist trope, perhaps? And if you can, and why does it help to define the future commune, to talk about communes? If we could talk about that, we would be really grateful.
Thank you, Sarah, and thank you for the organizers of this panel and People's Forum for hosting, and Chris Gilbert for writing an excellent book that provides the beginnings, the frame for us to be meeting here today. So I'm going to be speaking for about 10 minutes. I have to get off early.
Hang on. Jim Bob. You are in for a treat, my friend, when you come to our first family abolition stream. But if you wanna, okay, so it seems like Thomas is also confused about family abolition. Okay, so socialists believe that the nuclear family upholds capitalism, that they cannot destroy capitalism until they abolish the nuclear family. And so there are socialists, and Emmy O'Brien is one of them. She literally wrote a book about this recently called Family Abolition, Communizing Against Care, or Communizing for Care, or something like that. It's like the communization of care. She is best friends with Sophie Lewis. Sophie is our other favorite abolish the family socialist. Sophie has written 2 books about abolishing the family. And the reason, again, that they want to abolish the nuclear family is to abolish capitalism, because they believe that they cannot abolish capitalism until they abolish the nuclear family. I have done more abolish the family coverage than anyone else on the internet. I have a huge back catalog of abolish the family coverage, and I'm sure we will do it again sometime. But until then, I encourage everyone who has not yet been introduced to the dystopian nightmare that is abolish the family, to go check it out. Just search for abolish the family on my channel. A lot of stuff will come right up. It's real, and it's dystopian AF. And they really are trying to do this, and they try to do this in a lot of ways, through attacks on parental rights, through the introduction of queer and non-binary relationships in society, through polyamory, through all sorts of things. Through psychotherapy, that's another thing that they use. It's really messed up. I doubt we're going to talk much about it today, but it is a real thing. And if you want to see some previews of it, or access my back catalog of it, just search Abolish the Family on my channel. It'll come right up, I promise.
So I might not be joining the discussion later, and my apologies for that. It's certainly no lack of enthusiasm for this event. So as Sierra alluded to, I have 2 books, and they're sister books. They're very closely related to each other. One is fiction, one is nonfiction, and they both are concerned with the commune as a sort of central object of theorizing. So the first book I co-authored with the man al-Dahadi. It's called Everything for Everyone, an Oral History of the New York Commune, 2052 to 2072. It came out in 2022 with Common Notions Press. And so I'll tell you a little bit about the conceit of the book and some of our thinking that went into it, and read perhaps a couple of lines and then move on to the other book. So Everything for Everyone is a fictional collection of fictional oral histories with people in the future about their personal involvement in the world historical events of a global communist revolution when it finally arrives in New York City. And so me and a man play ourselves as very old ladies. It's 2072. And we are going around interviewing various people, being like, so where were you during the insurrection of Hunts Point and the People's Assembly of Crotona Park and the liberation of the MDC jail in Lower Manhattan, and sort of people telling their stories. And they're people, it'd be New York, people come from all over the world. And then second chapter is about the liberation of Palestine. And given the current genocide in Gaza, activists are rereading this chapter partially for solace and inspiration. And you learn about the Civil War in the Midwest between
Jenny, I apologize for missing your super chat. I really do. Sorry about that. This is why they want communism in the US. If there is any opposition, it isn't real communism, it seems. Yeah, I mean, that's why. So I'm not sure exactly what you're referring to when you said that, Jenny, but like the key point that I do want to take away from that is that they do want this here, guys. They want this here. Like, they're specifically targeting the US for this, because if they can do this here, they can export communism anywhere, because That's just the way it goes. If they can have their Marxist revolution here, they can get their Marxist revolution anywhere. So like saying things like they should just move to Venezuela, well, that's not going to work. Saying things like they should just move to Cuba, that's not going to work because they want it here. I appreciate the super chat, Jenny. Thank you.
From a very traumatized indigenous militant. And you learn about the fascist cults that
got one from Rottweiler. Thank you, Rottweiler. The nuclear family perpetuates capitalism because it breeds more capitalist workers into the system. Queer theory and the destruction of the gender binary are the tools to attack it. Hope this helps. Of course it does, Rottweiler. Thank you as always for your insight and for your super chat. Appreciated.
Ran Staten Island and learn about the explosive growth of revolutionary activity around the world and in New York City. And it being oral histories, there's this sort of seamless move back and forth between the psychological and the rhythms of the person's speech. Many of the characters are highly traumatized. The world enters into some very dark periods in the 2040s. And the sort of broad historical sweep. So you get this sort of like people's idiosyncratic and personal reflections on the kind of structural transformations that they've witnessed. So as an example, the first interview is with Miss Kelly. Miss Kelly is a Black trans sex worker who lives in Hunts Point, and she's based partially on many activists who I have been really deeply inspired by and have been my political mentors. I'm trans, and I moved to New York City in 2004 to work at a syringe exchange program in Hunts Point and did a lot of outreach to sex workers in the neighborhood, and have been in and out of sex worker movements and trans liberation movements ever since. So at one point I asked Miss Kelly, what does the commune mean to you? She says, it means we take care of each other. It means everything for everyone. It means we communized the shit out of this place. It means we took something that was property and we made it life. And I ask, there's the commune where you live.
Hang on, Tayton's asking, so is Emmy O'Brien in fact a male? No, I think Emmy O'Brien's a female. When Emmy O'Brien, listen, Emmy O'Brien is one of the major abolish the family activists in the country. What that means is that Emmy O'Brien is a queer Marxist. When Emmy O'Brien says they're trans, I don't believe it's that they transition. Emmy O'Brien has a kid. I know this for a fact. Emmy O'Brien has a kid. So Emmy O'Brien has female parts. When Emmy O'Brien says that they're trans, what they mean is that they're non-binary. They don't mean trans as in transition. They mean trans as in transform or transcend gender. Because remember, guys, the queer Marxists don't want gender to exist. They don't want men to exist. They don't want women to exist. They want everyone to be non-binary.
But also the commune of the whole region. And she says, yeah, I started to see that as we took over making sure everyone got fed. So the sex workers play a leading role in the Hunts Point commune that is launched with the takeover of the produce market there in 2052. She says that it was all in layers, that me and the girls could help take care of those hauling the food in and out, that they could take care of the borough could take care of the city could take care of the whole region, and the region could take care of us. It's all the commune, it's all for everyone. It took a lot of fighting and a lot of dying, and every day it seemed impossible, but we made it through. Somehow we made it through. And so the response from Everything for Everyone was quite remarkable, the kind of outpouring of enthusiasm for it. And neither Amanda nor I are fiction writers, but there was just tremendous interest and tremendous enthusiasm for the book. Oh, I have 3 minutes left. So I will move on to Family Abolition. So Family Abolition is a sister book. It's a nonfiction theorizing of a
See?
history of the family under racial capitalism. And there's a number of different components to the argument, but the one that's most relevant for us today is it has a speculative component, theorizing the commune as an institution that could replace the family as the primary unit of social reproduction without.
The commune replaces the nuclear family as the primary form of social reproduction. So for people who are new to abolish the family, there is something called social reproduction theory that these people lean on in their angst over the existence of the nuclear family. Essentially, social reproduction theory is the idea that social systems will reproduce themselves, okay? And specifically in this case, the nuclear family is where the future generation of proletarian capitalist workers are actually physically produced and raised under the social construct of capitalism. So they believe that as long as the nuclear family exists, the nuclear family will be pumping out the future proletarian workers in the form of children that are going to uphold capitalism. And so they need to abolish the nuclear family and children being born within the confines of the nuclear family if they're going to abolish capitalism. So what is their replacement? Their replacement is surrogacy. Their replacement is it takes a village to raise children. Sophie Lewis, I flat out heard her say that children should have at least three sets of parents in the community. Being biologically related to them has nothing to do with this. And basically they want to liberate children from being the private property of their parents, because when they say capitalism means private property, your children are included in that. And once they liberate children from being the private property of their parents, that means the children belong to everyone. The children belong to the commune. The children belong to the comrades. She just said that the commune is going to replace the nuclear family. Let's listen again.
The family under racial capitalism. And there's a number of different components to the argument, but the one that's most relevant for us today is it has a speculative component, theorizing the commune as an institution that could replace the family as the primary unit of social reproduction.
Ding.
Without consolidating social reproduction activities primarily into the state or into the market, which I think there are good reasons for avoiding both. And so the commune is a way of theorizing revolutionary transition in the book and thinking about, particularly I draw from the communization tradition. And then also I'm really interested in what I call insurgent social reproduction. So these are the communal forms of social reproduction that emerge in the midst of militancy and insurgency, when large numbers of working class people are in direct rebellion against the state and capital. What kind of strategies do they actually use to reproduce?
When she says rebellion against the state, she doesn't mean, she means the capitalist state. So these people fashion themselves as anarchists. They're not anarchists. They want to abolish the capitalist state, the capitalist government, and they want to replace it with their own socialist government. They're the ones that want to be in charge of the state. Don't confuse these people with anarchists. These are not anarchists. This is natural in your first Socialism Saturday, Jim Bob. Just lean into it. It's going to be okay, my friend. Just hang on. I promise. It's going to be okay. We're here to help you through this. It can be overwhelming. I'm not trying to be patronizing. I'm really not. It's just that when you first start watching socialism, it is overwhelming when you actually see what's going on. Chat over on Rumble. Will this person actually give up their own child? Yes, they will. It is a misperception by conservatives. They always say, well, they want this for everyone else, but not for themselves. Oh, no, 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 no. Most of these people already live the lifestyle that they're trying to sell to others. They already do it. They have to do it in different ways because it's not the official system that we're under. But would this person give up their child? Yup. Probably already has many people helping raise the kid. Probably already has all those influences. These are true believers, guys. These are not hypocrites. These are true believers that will they give up their house? Yup. Many of them don't even have houses for that specific reason. Will they give up their private property? Yes, they will. 100%. These are true believers, guys. RDS over on Rumble, we don't debunk these people. That's not part of what we're doing here. So I'm going to ask you to please stop. Tayton says UW Washington has a +5 credit SRT class. What? Oh, do they really? Social reproduction theory. Well, maybe we'll have to look into that, Tayton. I do appreciate it.
Themselves. So I opened with the example of the Oaxaca commune in 2006 and thinking about women cooking and taking care of their kids and serving coffee, living on the barricades, defending their neighborhoods against nightly attacks by paramilitaries, and women taking over the radio stations and this whole rebellion that unfolded in Oaxaca. And similarly, like I look at how social reproduction happens at protest camps. So the commune, rather than being a deliberate plan, a blueprint that's sort of imposed, or being necessarily the deliberate collective housing arrangements that I grew up in, spent a lot of time in my young adulthood. The commune is actually emerging from the social reproduction of protest camps themselves. That this insurgent social reproduction that's sustaining the protests requires collectivizing social reproduction. That the nuclear household is very poorly suited to enabling people to protest.
So there's a lot to break down there. One, social reproduction just means having kids. That's all that means. Having kids and raising kids. So don't let the terminology fool you. When she says social reproduction, she means having kids and raising kids. When she says that the nuclear family is poorly suited, so she said the nuclear family is poorly suited to enabling people to protest. Why is that? Because they believe that capitalism created the gender binary, which put women in the gendered position of being in the home, where they had to raise the future generation of proletariat worker, where they had to pay for the future generation of proletariat worker because the state is not paying to raise the kids, and where they had to spend all their time either working at their hourly wage job because they assume everyone's an hourly worker. They had to spend all their time at their hourly wage job and then come home and raise the kid. And if you're spending all your time at your job or raising your future proletarian worker, that doesn't leave any time left for protest. Why is protest important? Because these people believe in the perpetual revolution. They very literally want a revolution. They want that's what the revolution is perpetual. The revolution never stops. Every single time these people say the term struggle, as in struggle session or the struggle that we're all engaged in, we'll probably hear that 10 or 12 times at least. What they mean is the perpetual revolution. So these people feel like if you have the nuclear family, and the nuclear family is requiring you to raise the children in addition to your full-time job because you're oppressed under capitalism, then you have no time left to protest. You have no time left to participate in the perpetual revolution because you're spending too much time engaging in the social reproduction required by the nuclear family under capitalism. Wouldn't these ideas turn women into breeding stock meant to serve the revolution? Well, no, because they've got birthing pods and surrogacy pods, and they're trying to figure out how to gestate babies in the bodies of brain dead people. So, no, they're figuring out other ways around that. I'm not joking about that.
And so neither book is a dismissal of the need to collectivize production or think about communism in terms of production, but I feel like there's been a lot more extensive theorizing and attention to that over time, and that the social reproduction theory has been very powerful for beginning to draw attention to all these other forms of labor that go into the reproduction of people, and that both books are sort of a contribution to trying to think about what communism means in those terms. So thank you again to everyone who's involved in this, and it's really been a great pleasure to read Chris Gilbert's book, and Kale Akuno and Bellamy Foster have been big inspirations for me for a long time. So I think I'm out of time.
Thank you so much, Michelle. And in the chat, in the comments, somebody is asking, Barry is asking if the commune is a viable strategy. And I think that that's a very relevant question. We have seen them working here in Venezuela, but not everybody is here in Venezuela. So we will now move on to, we will transition to two really existing communal movements. One which is related to the book that has been mentioned, the Commune or Nothing book, that being Venezuela, Bolivarian Revolution. And the other one, the Jackson-Kush Plan and Cooperation Jackson in the Black Belt of the US South. So we will begin with Kale Akuno. Kale is a spokesperson for Cooperation Jackson. He is the co-author of Jackson Rising Redux. He's also, we know, writing a new book, and we are really looking forward to that. So Kale, I wanted to ask you, since, well, Cooperation Jackson started in 2014. It basically centers on combating racial capitalism while constructing new social relations. And basically the question I wanted to ask you is, can you explain the project's strategy and specifically how it appeals to the commons and to common property? Thank you, Kale, for being here with us tonight.
No, thank you all for hosting this. Really kind of putting some threads back together in many respects, some of which what I mean by that I'll come to. But to start with the question, you know, because we could talk about this for hours on end. I think all of us could in many respects. The root of kind of our commons-oriented approach, first and foremost, starts with our community land trust. And that's the Fannie Lou Hamer Community Land Trust, which is stewarded by Cooperation Jackson. And we currently have over 40 different properties in West Jackson that are part of our community land trust. There are several houses which are being occupied as a housing cooperative. And then there are several commercial spaces that are being utilized by various co-ops and community-oriented businesses. And then there's several land parcels which are being utilized by our Freedom Farms co-op to help us move on the objective of food sovereignty within our community. But I want people, and I'm glad you mentioned the Jackson-Kush Plan, I want people to kind of take a little step back and put us within the heart of a broader strategic plan. And that's the plan that was just mentioned by Circle, the Jackson-Kush Plan. And I think it's important to cite some of the intellectual and movement history that kind of led to that, and what I meant by coming back to some circles. So if it's not known to the audience, I'm going to make it known that the Bolivarian revolutionary process was very instrumental in our development, right? When I was a member of the Malcolm X grassroots movement, we were very much in touch, particularly with the Afro-Venezuelan network, and large portions of our work were kind of field tested and learned from studying and being able, various of our members being able to go to Venezuela and see many of the cooperatives and see many of the communes that were beginning to form in the early 2000s. And so we drew a lot of our work or model or theory from those models, and myself also as being one of the key kind of writers and articulators and theorists behind those works. Just to let everyone here know, I was glad to hear Mazzaro's name invoked because it was his work Beyond Capital, which for me, along with W.E.B. Du Bois's Black Reconstruction in America, those were two of the three works that really provided a clear strategic foundation and theoretical foundation for what you see in the Jackson-Kush plan. And it formed, that work in particular, Beyond Capital, really underscored the aims and objectives of what we've been trying to both accomplish and operationalize to the greatest extent possible in Jackson through the vehicle of Cooperation Jackson within the overall context of trying to execute the Jackson-Kush plan. And for those of you who don't know what that plan is, it was, I think it's important to historicize this, that the public version of that plan came out in 2012. And this was a year before the unfortunate passing of President Chavez. And we had been in some dialogue with various forces in Venezuela and showing the work even prior to get folks feedback on how this might work, where it might fit in to some overall global strategy to give people advice in terms of, how do we anchor this within a broader anti-capitalist context, within a broader anti-capitalist movement. We took our charge. I know I did very personally. I was at the social forum that was held in Venezuela in 2007, where Chavez put out the challenge of where is this going, right? And that it needs to go in a particular direction, particularly a socialist, eco-socialist direction. That challenge was put out. And then I think we tried to start answering that and bringing that movement to the United States. And we took this notion that we had to start where we had our strength within the Jackson community and build and transform the relations there and to try to democratize the community to the greatest extent possible. So we adopted this notion of participatory and antagonistic democracy that we try to bring and make instrumentals to the other major component of the Jackson-Kush plan, which is the People's Assembly, and to pursue the context of seeking to hold office within the municipality to push the contradictions to the greatest extent possible, with an understanding that to hold office, particularly within the United States, that you cannot manage the contradictions of capitalism, and that fundamentally within the bourgeois order and society is what that means, to try to manage those contradictions. So we said we aren't trying to manage them. We're going to try to heighten them and to use all the instruments, both of the formal kind of government space, but also throughout the People's Assembly, to agitate and to make all the vital questions about how do you actually govern a community, to make those mass questions to kind of upend the various relationships of power within the state of Mississippi. And
Hello. Okay. That was a little convoluted. So I want to lay out what just happened. So we need to start with this. The 4 goals of the woke left are always and forever the same. Gain as much power as possible, destabilize the system, attack capitalism, usher in their Marxist utopia. First thing they need to do is gain as much power as possible. They do this by getting themselves into positions of institutional power in colleges and universities, in K through 12 schools, in the government, in the media, etc., etc. They use those positions of institutional power to make decisions and to set policies that is going to fundamentally destabilize the system. The destabilization is a feature It is not a bug. If you wonder why the left always seems to come out on the side of chaos and insanity, it's because they are purposefully trying to destabilize the system. When they destabilize the system, they are going to cause normal people pain. And those people are going to be going, why do things suck so badly? What's happening? Why is everything crazy? Kind of seems like what's happening right now, right? Once they gain power and they use that power to destabilize the system, they start causing pain. And then when people start complaining about all the problems in the world, they say, do you know what caused those problems? Capitalism. Capitalism caused all of the problems in the world. If we just get rid of capitalism, that's going to fix every single problem that we have. And then what they do with that is they start to breed mistrust in the capitalist system. Now, there are a lot of reasons that people might not like capitalism, but we're not going to go into those here because most of those people do not define capitalism in the same way that these people define capitalism, which is about private property ownership. Every single time these people are saying, no, they do have a plan. They have a much better plan than conservatives have. Every single time these people say capitalism, what they mean is they want to abolish your ability to own private property. Now, they don't spell that out specifically because if they spelled that out specifically, no one would be on board with that. Instead, they just say capitalism is the problem. Capitalism causes all of this pain. And then people go, yeah, capitalism sucks, because they don't realize that these people are defining capitalism as private property ownership, which means they want to take away your ability to own a house, a business, an apartment complex if you're a landlord. They want to take away your parental rights. They want to take away your individual liberties, which they define as private property. That's what they mean when they say capitalism. So once they stir up people against capitalism, the last thing they do is they say, how about we try Marxism? Do you guys want to try Marxism? Because we know that capitalism sucks. You want to try Marxism? How about we do Marxism? And that's how they bring about their Marxist revolution. Okay? What he just said, and we're going to go back and listen to it again because it was a little convoluted, but I want people to hear this. What he just said is they are specifically riling people up against capitalism to destabilize the system. He just said it. They are going to use what's going on to rile people up as a destabilizing point. The destabilization is a feature, it's not a bug, and they're going to blame capitalism for all of the problems. Let's go back and listen again because he just said this. It's a little convoluted, but you have to listen for it. All right, let's go.
In the Jackson community and build and transform the relations there and to try to democratize the community to the greatest extent possible. So we adopted this notion of participatory and antagonistic democracy that we try to bring and make instrumentals to the other major component of the Jackson Kush Plan, which is the People's Assembly, and to pursue the context of seeking to hold office within the municipality to push the contradictions to the greatest extent possible, with an understanding that to hold office, particularly within the United States, that you cannot manage the contradictions of capitalism, and that fundamentally within the bourgeois order and society is what.
To hold office in the United States, you cannot manage the contradictions of capitalism, and that's in the bourgeois order. Bourgeois means capitalist. Bourgeois means the capitalist class. The worker class is the proletarian, the capitalist class is the bourgeois. Let's rewind a little bit.
Possible, with an understanding that to hold office, particularly within the United States, that you cannot manage the contradictions of capitalism, and that fundamentally within the bourgeois order and society is what that means, to try to manage those contradictions. So we said we aren't trying to manage them. We're going to try to heighten them and use all the instruments, both of the formal kind of government space, but also throughout the People's Assembly, to agitate and to make all the vital questions about how do you actually govern a community, to make those mass questions to kind of upend the various relationships of power.
He just said they're going to use positions of political power in order to agitate the contradictions of capitalism, in order to purposefully upend the positions of the in order to upend the system. I don't remember exactly the word he used. We'll listen to it again. But did you guys hear that? They're going to use the positions of power in order to use to agitate against capitalism, to upend the system. That's what he just said. Jenny's getting inky with it. This is why it's important to pay attention to your local politics. Could be one of our towns next. That's correct. They're trying to do this everywhere, guys. Don't assume that just because you live in a red area, they're not doing this in your area, because they are doing it there too. Let's listen again.
Manage the contradictions of capitalism, and that's fundamentally within the bourgeois order of society is what that means, to try to manage those contradictions. So we said we aren't trying to manage them. We're going to try to heighten them and to use all the instruments, both of the formal kind of government space, but also throughout the People's Assembly, to agitate and to make all the vital questions about how do you actually govern a community, to make those mass questions to kind of upend the various relationships of power within the state of Mississippi. And
they're using it to upend the various manifestations of power. They're using they're using the quote unquote contradictions of capitalism, again, which they mean private property when they say capitalism. They're using the contradictions of capitalism to agitate and to upend the positions of power in the state of Mississippi, and he's going to say, and the United States. Does everyone hear that? This was 2 days ago. Okay, this is new. This is brand new. 2 days ago. It's not theoretical. When I say this is what they're doing, I'm not saying I'm reading a philosophy paper like James Lindsay does. I'm saying we are watching them say it right now, right in front of us. But because the language that they use is so convoluted, people don't understand what they're saying. We know what they're saying because we've spent the last several years reverse engineering their language. Well, slightly different thing with Palestine, Tayton, because Palestine has legitimate grievances. These people do not have legitimate grievances. Palestine has legitimate grievances, so it's not exactly the same thing, no. But thank you for the super chat. I appreciate it. Oh, yeah, of course, disarming the civilian population plays into this. 100%. 100%.
United States government to challenge it and to move us closer towards self-determination and sovereignty, which is some core aims and objectives of our.
So he just said they're doing this to upend not only in the state of Mississippi, but also the United States government, to move us towards sovereignty or self-determination. When he says sovereignty or self-determination, he means socialism. That's what he means. Let's just go back and watch. I know we're rewinding a lot, but it's important that people hear this.
Of power within the state of Mississippi and the United States government, to challenge it and to move us closer towards self-determination and sovereignty, which is some core aims and objectives of our particular movement and project. So you have to situate cooperation, Jackson, within all of that. And I'm just saying this in brief, but you have to situate us within that. And what we are trying to do is to hold property, starting with land, in common, to create new methods of in relations of production.
What does holding property, starting with land, in common mean? He said, we want to hold property starting with land in common. What does that mean? Pop quiz for the chat. What does it mean to hold property starting with land in common? What does that mean? It means our property. It means expropriation. It means decolonization. Very good. That means decolonization. He means the land will be owned by the collective. No private property. You will not own a home. You will not own a farm. You will not own land. You will not have your own private property to do with what you want, because the land will be owned by the collective. Because these people are against private property. No private property. No private property. Seizing the property by the state. And they don't mean the current government that we have, because they believe they're going to replace the current government that we have. They mean confiscation of your land. That's exactly right. They mean confiscation of your land. We're happy you were able to make it too, Seth. Welcome. That's what a commune is, guys. Everyone owns the land. Everyone has the land. It's a commune. It's collective ownership. No private land. Government confiscation of land. No one owns the land. That's exactly right, guys. That's exactly right. Let's listen again. When we hit important parts, we listen multiple times, because I want you guys to hear how they're using the language, because once you start to recognize the language, you start seeing it everywhere.
Within that. And what we are trying to do is to hold property, starting with land, in common, to create new methods of in relations of production that focus in on improving the quality of life, not trying to maximize profit, and to come up with new techniques to not only improve the overall quality of life, but to situate as much as possible all the means of production into the community's hands. And we are doing that through a process of
that is a dictatorship of the proletariat. They are confiscating private property. They are confiscating the means of production, and they're locating it in the hands of the worker, because they believe, going back to where we started, they believe that if they abolish capitalism, if they abolish the profit motive, then they will fix all of the problems in society, and that everyone will have a better quality of life under communism than we have under capitalism.
What we call community production, which is using the tools and techniques of digital fabrication to try to come up with appropriate technology. And for us, that means not only utilizing technology that we ourselves can own and control, but to utilize technology to produce use values that service community needs, that eliminate all the unnecessary waste and ecological damage that's caused by the capitalist productive process and relations. So these are some of the fundamental things that Cooperation Jackson is really concentrating on. And to answer one of the final questions, is the commune possible and viable? Our answer to that is yes, and it can be under a variety of different types of circumstances and contexts. It's just a matter of, I think, trying to figure out the applications that work in your space, time, and conditions, and to operationalize those to the greatest extent possible with mass community support.
That's great, Kali. Thank you so much. Of course, being here in Venezuela, we always look to the project with a great deal of admiration and, of course, a feeling of sisterhood, brotherhood. So now we are going to turn to Venezuela, to the second actually existing communal experiment here that we are talking about today. There are actually communes that work in Venezuela. Going back to this question that has been asked on the chat.
Hang on, we have a question from T-Bone Man. It's okay to ask questions. Dumb question. What stops laziness in the commune? I get that they're devoted enough to not all be lazy, but what stops moochers from doing whatever the heck they want? Food. This is a great question. Because in the socialist utopia, you are going to be assigned a job. You don't get to pick your job. You are going to be assigned your job by the community, which really means the government that these people create, but they say it's by the community. You don't get a choice, and you have to go to your job. What if you don't like your job? What if you don't want to do your job? What if you want to play video games all day? Well, these people control all the food. If you don't go do your job, you don't eat. That's it. These people in the communist utopia, these people control where you live because you're not allowed to buy a house. They will control where you live. They will control education. They will control healthcare. They will control if you can heat your home during the winter. They will control the food production. They will control the food distribution. They will control whether or not you're allowed to travel. They will control every aspect of your life, but the most important of which is that if you don't work, you don't eat. So that's some pretty big motivation, isn't it? Thank you for the question. Appreciate it.
We see them actually working. So we'll talk more about them. Chris will be talking more about them. So Chris Gilbert is author of Commune or Nothing, the book that we've mentioned a couple of times, and that also gives the name to our panel today. It's published by Monthly Review Press. He's professor of political studies at Venezuela's Bolivarian University in Caracas. And he is co-author of Venezuela, the Present as Struggle, a book that we actually co-authored. Chris, your book, Commune or Nothing, looks at the communal project that emerged under the auspices of the Bolivarian Revolution. Of course, Chavez comes to power in 1998, but it is in 2006 that Chavez begins to talk about socialism. In 2009, that Chavez proposes the commune as the path to socialism. And it's in 2012 when he says commune or nothing, comuna or nada, which is for us, for those of us who are here in Venezuela committed to the communal project, kind of like a very powerful 3 words, a very powerful motive for working. So your book includes the accounts of some 8 individual communes, while it looks also at the history and the deep roots of the project. Communes are not something new. In short, you present also a theory of the commune. So, Chris, if you can explain the book's theoretical theorization of the commune as a strategic building block for the new communist society. And thank you for being here today.
Thanks. It's great to have this opportunity to talk with everybody about the commune. I guess I think we, perhaps in an aleatory manner, happened upon a good subtitle for the program because it's called Communes Against Capitalism. I mean that because one common thread that's been running through people's discussions has been strategy, and obviously it's not just because we have some enthusiasm for communes. It's rather that communes seem to be a viable strategy for overcoming capitalism. So that's kind of the way I want to structure my brief intervention. You mentioned that there's a theory of the commune, and of course in my book, and there's yes, that's right. And like any self-respecting theory, it's a theory that's based on reality, abstracts from reality, and it's also a theory that I think has potential to return to reality.
I just want to do a quick pause. I think we're about halfway through our stream today. We're 2 hours in, guys, and I want to say a particular hello to everyone watching over on Rumble today. Of course, I love my YouTube audience as well, and if anyone is watching on X, I appreciate you guys as well. Guys, please make sure you have mounted that like button for me if you appreciate the time that I'm spending with you, breaking down all of this stuff, showing you things that no one else on the internet is showing you. Please make sure you mount the like button, or if you don't feel comfortable mounting the like button, you can high five the like button, you can shake the like button's hand, you can give the like button a kiss on the cheek, whatever you want to do to the like button. Just no smashing on this channel. We're not silly teenagers here. We don't smash, we mount like adults. So please make sure you do that. Please also make sure you do subscribe to my channel, because subscribing to the channel is going to allow for like notifications, stuff like that. If you want to be subscribed, particularly on YouTube, YouTube unsubscribes people from my channel all the effing time. And so please make sure you're subscribed if you want to be. I stream Monday through Friday at 5 p.m. Eastern time very consistently. On Saturdays, we do Socialism Saturday at 6 p.m. Eastern time. So 1 hour later, because my weekend too, I have other stuff I need to do on Saturdays. So if you want to come and join my streams, we watch a lot of this stuff throughout the week. We do the really hardcore stuff on Saturdays. You're welcome to join us anytime. And of course, please make sure you are subscribed to my Substack as well, Carlyn, KARLYN.substack.com. And I really appreciate it. All right, let's keep going.
A critical perspective, and maybe I'll get to that at the end, or maybe I'll have time to talk about that at the end. John mentioned Messeros, and actually Messeros enters in a second moment in my book. Obviously, Messeros is
Thank you, Nick. Appreciate it.
Before and after, an epic-making thinker. But I actually kind of tried to reconstruct a certain elements of the commune using value form theory and social reproduction theory. Those may seem to be an odd pairing, and probably most people aren't aware of value form theory. But just one takeaway from value form theory. Value form theory puts emphasis on how capitalist value is a social form. It's not just a magnitude or a substance. So once you start thinking about value as a social form, that in a way connects with social reproduction theory, because social reproduction theory is concerned with the totality of capitalist production. Essentially how, capitalism, we don't only produce mercancías, commodities, but we also reproduce the labor force, we reproduce life. And you can see that those two elements of production are both.
Okay, he just described social reproduction theory. I want to make sure people heard that. He said that capitalism is not just about producing commodities. We also reproduce life. That's what they mean by social reproduction, guys. Literally, the production of society, the birthing of the children, which they don't consider to be children. They consider them to be the future proletariat workers who are oppressed under capitalism. This is why the nuclear family, according to these people, must be destroyed, because the nuclear family is literally birthing the future generation of workers under capitalism. Let's listen again.
Capitalist value is a social form. It's not just a magnitude or a substance. So once you start thinking about value as a social form, that in a way connects with social reproduction theory, because social reproduction theory is concerned with the totality of capitalist production. Essentially how, capitalism, we don't only produce mercancías, commodities, but we also reproduce the labor force, we reproduce life. And you can see that those two elements of production are both structured by the value relation, if we see the value relation in an ample social sense. And so when I say the commune, my theory, to put it maybe isn't it slightly exaggerated language or theorization might be more appropriate. My theorization of the commune is essentially that the commune offers an integral solution to the problems of capitalism, precisely because it promises to abolish the whole range of value relations. And you can look at how that would change what's called productive work in current society, commodity producing work. On the one hand, that kind of work is generally in what I call indirectly social labor. It's labor that's mediated by the social. When in capitalist society we produce things in a social sense, it's part of a social relation, but it's mediated by the market. Therefore, it's an indirectly social relation. And a commune proposes to end that indirect sociality, and as John was saying, it's an ex ante planning. And in other words, you are producing knowing where it's going. And so that would have the possibility to end exploitation and alienation. The alienation is always involved in capitalist commodity production, the sites of capitalist commodity production, which is an alienation that's exaggerated by the fact that, of course, in a capitalist society, people don't actually control the conditions of their production. But it also, this is where I say it's an integral solution to the problems of capitalism. The commune offers the possibility of taking reproductive labor out of the household or out of situations of oppression, unpaid, under-recognized reproductive labor, care labor, domestic labor. It offers to take it out of the sites of oppression and also bring it into a democratically controlled, bring it into the whole of democratically controlled, directly social labor. So that's why I say the commune is an integral solution to the problems of capitalism. And
pop quiz for the chat. When they say democratically controlled, what do they mean? When he says democratically controlled, What do they mean? I'll play this little bit again as you guys answer this, but when he says democratically controlled, what do they mean? They mean socialism. Because they believe that the only way in which people will have a say in what they do is to implement a socialist society. So when they say democratically controlled, they mean socialism. They mean socialism. They mean controlled by the collective. Democracy to these people means socialism. It means the communist state will be in control. They mean socialism. They mean their control. Socialist governance, communist control, socialism. Socialism, socialism. Exactly. Let's listen.
Possibility of taking reproductive labor out of the household or out of situations of oppression, unpaid, under-recognized reproductive labor, care labor, domestic labor. It offers to take it out of the sites of oppression and also bring it into a democratically controlled, bring it into the whole of democratically controlled, directly social labor. So that's why I say the commune is an integral solution to the problems of capitalism. And I think there's an increasing awareness in our time that
he just said it. Communism is the answer to the problems caused by capitalism, because under communism, everyone has a say in what they're doing. That's what democracy means. It means socialism. Which, by the way, guys, for people who don't know, if you haven't heard me say this, when I use the terms socialist, communist, or Marxist, we use those three terms interchangeably because these people use them interchangeably. If you go to these people's private meetings, which I've done on more than one occasion, and you listen to them talk to each other, they will refer to each other as a socialist, communist, and Marxist in the same sentence. So yes, there are nuances between those things. I acknowledge there are nuances, but these people think of them as interchangeable, and so we use them interchangeably.
And also bring it into a democratically controlled, bring it into the whole of democratically controlled, directly social labor. So that's why I say the commune is an integral solution to the problems of capitalism. And I think there's an increasing awareness in our time that capitalism is not only about exploitation, but it also incorporates a whole range of oppressions. So in some sense, I say, how else but by establishing communes can we overcome this whole range of oppressions, which includes exploitation, and it also includes the expropriation of the earth. Actually, in a later moment, the ecological and environmentalist theme is present throughout my book, but I explored it somewhat further in an article I wrote just this summer, in which I look at how communes offer the possibility of overcoming the ecological crisis too, precisely because they, one important thing they do, as Don was saying, is that they return production to use values, and they kind of connect production and consumption together, so that production does not become this kind of treadmill of senseless production of often useless commodities. And another thing they do is they bring, precisely by abolishing the kind of hierarchical separation of productive and reproductive labor and bringing them into a democratically organized totality, they should, that should give greater protagonism to the production of life, the reproductive labor, which generally has a smaller ecological footprint. So that's the kind of totalizing view. And I was saying this, of course, is related to and directly related to one's experience in Venezuela, also borrowing on reflections from Masaros and other people. One thing that I was saying is a common theme through everybody's intervention has been the theme of strategy. And Sita, when you were presenting the theme of communes, of course, it's important that, one of the unique things about Venezuela, special things about our situation here, is that the commune is part of a strategy of socialist construction that strategy has been developing over the course of the process, which now has more than 20 years of existence. And as people perhaps know, that the process originally, Chavez was elected initially pursuing a kind of third way socialism, but it was radicalized over time. There was, after 2002, there was the process was declared anti-imperialist. Then it declared itself socialist around 2006. And then in 2009, the commune emerges. But the impressive thing here is that the commune is part of this. It's a building block, or Chavez would sometimes say a cell, it's a cell in a body. And so it's important for us to think about that now, because a commune in itself is not necessarily revolutionary. In fact, like the kibbutz can actually be a counter-revolutionary settler colonialist proposal. So, and Chavez actually said this in the famous moment. He said, an isolated commune is counter-revolutionary. And he meant that it's important to be part of a strategic development that goes forward towards socialism. One little thing I want to add to that is the importance of history. I think that and that actually enters in both the work of Kali and Michel, the importance of recovering emancipatory traditions and going forward with them. I have a particular take on that, which I think is actually integral to the Bolivarian process. The Bolivarian process is called the Bolivarian process precisely because it tries to recover the legacy of Bolivar and take it forward in the present. And that, of course, has a specific bearing on the commune, because the commune in Venezuela reaches back to Maroon traditions of emancipation here, Maroon resistance here in Venezuela. Maroon communities were called Communes. And there's also a huge indigenous legacy of communal resistance and communal self-governed autonomies here. So the commune here must connect with and carry those forward. That's actually one of the more perhaps exotic to some readers. Will find that my reference to what I call revolutionary romanticism, because for me, romanticism is about this revolutionary use of the past.
I just want to note for people who are new to socialism, sometimes we have to sit through a lot of pieces of them saying absolutely nothing. That's just part of the game we're playing. I wish I could make it easier. I wish I could eliminate all the word salad that socialists use. I can't. So sometimes we just have to let them talk through their feelings, and they don't say anything of substance. And when they're not saying anything of substance, I'm not doing commentary on it. So it's a great time to get another drink, refresh your beverage, get a snack. And sometimes we just have to let them work through their feelings, because this is just what it is, okay? So there's no shortcut to learning how to speak socialist. I apologize. I wish there was.
Has to go forward, which I would actually say is quite common, not exotic at all in the Bolivarian process. And it's actually integral to a way of thinking, a form of revolutionary historiography that uses the past to go forward, appeals to it as a kind of counter. I see it as almost a necessary solution, or it's like an Ariadne's thread to lead us out of the labyrinth of the idea that capitalism itself might be progressive. The last thing I was going to say was about the critical potential of theory. I think that any theory should allow you to come back. You take a theory as an abstraction from reality, and then it allows you to go back and apply it to reality and see how reality holds up to it. And in this case, in my book, I developed a theory in the first chapters, and then of course there are these chapters that are kind of chronicles of visits to the communes. And at the end, there's some moments in which I attempt to apply the theory critically to the communes. And one sense in which I do that is ask the question, in what sense are the communes actually advancing towards socialism? Which that necessarily means part of the strategic element is that the communes have to work to hegemonize the whole economy, the whole society, and they also have to work towards the abolition of the state. And I explore that in the different efforts to do that, and to what extent it's succeeded. And all one can say for now is it's a highly contested field. The other thing, of course, is this question about the reproductive labor. To what extent have the communes actually emancipated social reproductive labor, which of course is a typical side of gender oppression and racial oppression. And there's a mixed record on that, with some curious things, like one commune has actually made it part of its discourse. But so far, it's not actually the commune that's probably made the most concrete steps. But my general sense is that there's still a long way to go in that area in the effort to emancipate social reproductive labor. So that pretty much rounds up what I want to say in this first intervention. I'll be interested to know what we can say in the discussion period about the theme of communes and what we have in common about that, which I think is a great deal.
Thank you so much, Chris. Now we are going to open for a second round. So everybody is going to be joining us. Oh, good.
Emmy O'Brien is still there. Excellent. Excellent.
That's wonderful. Michelle is here. So we thought that she might have to leave, but she's here. So what we were thinking is that we would each take a round of 5 minutes, because of course we probably just touched the tip of the iceberg in relation to our each person's reflections on the issue of the communes, right? So if each person wants to add a little bit more or respond to each other's comments. There's also some comments. There's a comment that we have more or less read from Nicolas Vargas about the commune not being viable, but also he connects it to the issue of the state. So that is one question that could be addressed, but I will also maybe be throwing in some other questions soon in between the different rounds. So I guess we'll go first. I don't know, Michelle, if you have to leave, or maybe we go with you now and then we pick up with John.
Sure. I won't take my full 5 minutes because I do have to pop off. But these presentations are really wonderful, and I think they, particularly Kali and Chris, are drawing attention to the strategic value of the commune as a practical activity under even in the conditions of racial capitalism, and it's a strategy of resistance. And that intrigues me, and it's quite different in my work. The kinds of communes, as we sometimes call them, that I grew up in, were collective housing arrangements, in punk and anarchist communities. And I became quite cynical about their sort of revolutionary potential in a meaningful sense. But I liked the collectivization of household labor. And in my work, I theorize.
See, I just want to note this because someone was saying earlier, would this person give up their kid? Would this person give up their house? This person literally grew up in collective housing because this person is probably at least a second generation socialist. I really want to make sure people understand this. A lot of the people that I met when I went undercover at the Socialism Conference were second or third generation socialists. They were raised in this. The right-wing talking point that socialists don't have kids, the left doesn't have kids, is completely wrong. Not only do they have kids, they have entire child care programs where they are strategically planning for their kids to be groomed throughout their entire childhood to be the next generation of socialist activists. Emmy O'Brien just said that she grew up in collective housing. So this isn't theoretical. It's not as though they have to give up anything. They don't have to give up anything because this is how they choose to live. What they're doing is trying to enforce their lifestyle onto other people.
As the emergence of a communist society, so is necessarily entailing the overthrow of racial capitalism, the destruction of the state.
Racial capitalism just means that capitalism caused racism. That's what it means. They think that capitalism caused slavery. Slavery caused systemic racism. Systemic racism are the economic disparities we see between Black people and white people. The only way to get rid of the economic disparities is to abolish capitalism and institute equity. Equity means Marxism. Anytime these people say racial capitalism, they mean systemic racism, which they believe was caused by capitalism. I just want to go back a little bit and listen to her say this whole piece again.
Of racial capitalism, and it's a strategy of resistance. And that intrigues me, and it's quite different in my work. The kinds of communes, as we sometimes call them, that I grew up in, were collective housing arrangements, in punk and anarchist communities. And I became quite cynical about their sort of revolutionary potential in a meaningful sense. But I liked the collectivization of household labor. And in my work, I theorize the commune as the emergence of a communist society. So is necessarily entailing the overthrow of racial capitalism, the destruction of the state, the collectivization and communizing of means of production, and that as a unit of social reproduction, it really lends itself to collective self-governance, to mass participation in the management of society. And so I think about the sort of commune as a revolutionary unit of social reproduction that emerges in a communist context. And so my link, I see in the Q&A, someone was arguing that I was conflating the assembly and the commune. The link is that I don't know how to get there. And, you know, these works and Cooperation Jackson and the Bolivarian project in Venezuela.
Hang on, I see a chat over on Rumble. Elisa, you've been to my streams long enough to start to know better, girl. I have to call this out. Elisa, because you're still shilling conservative talking points. Elisa says over on Rumble, well, this person probably answered my question. They were probably not raised in love. No. Wrong. Socialists love their kids. Socialists do take care of their kids. And I've said it before and I'll say it again. Going to a socialist event, and I'm willing to bet that I'm the only person here who's actually gone to socialist events other than other socialists who might be in my chat. Socialist events are nice. When they think you're on their team, they treat you really nice. There's camaraderie, there's love, there's support. I would take going to a socialist event any day of the week over going to CPAC. That's the goddamn truth. And so saying that this person was just not raised in love and that's why they want to be a communist, no, wrong, incorrect. That is a conservative bullshit talking point that this person wouldn't agree with, that I don't agree with, and please just stop saying it. I will beat the conservative talking points out of you guys until you either leave or you get with the program. There is no evidence at all. Alicia's arguing with me over on Rumble. There is no evidence at all that these people were not raised in love. That is a bullshit conservative talking point. Oh, and now we have another conservative over on Rumble, RDS, saying, it sounds like Carlin is trying to reclaim socialism. So here is where the conservatives, because they don't like what I'm telling them, are telling me that I'm a socialist. All right, conservatives. So Alicia's getting put in a 5-minute timeout and she can think about it. RDS is getting put in a 5-minute timeout. And you guys can think about it while you're in your timeout. And if you don't want to get the conservative talking points beaten out of you, then don't come back. And it's really that simple. Because what you're saying are bullshit conservative talking points.
Very exciting, and I think worth paying very close attention to. I don't know how to get there and don't claim to have a revolutionary strategy, but the collectivization that does happen in the midst of sustained rebellions, I think is worth paying very close attention to. And I would argue that the moments of family abolition happen in the context of sustained rebellions. And that's part of what makes them so transformative for their participants, so joyful, and one of the only things that makes rebellion sustainable in any particular sense. They cannot be sustainable unless they're victorious, but that the extent to which they're able to collectivize social reproduction is about meeting people's collective needs and care needs, while in rebellion, while in struggle, in a way that's able to sustain the struggle moving forward.
Struggle means
so
revolution.
The extent to which I sort of try to draw a link between the future and the present, those are the points of the present that kind of really interest me. So I guess I'll just close out with a couple of questions for Kali and Chris in particular. And so both of you, are talking about communes in the present. And I'm wondering particularly how consumption works, right? So cooperative labor is a very important part, as I understand, of what's happening in Cooperation Jackson and in Venezuela. But communes or nothing makes the distinction between the commune and the cooperative, the commune as a site, including of collective consumption and social reproduction. And so I'm thinking I'd love to hear in more concrete terms what that actually looks like in people's lives. So thank you, everyone. And I'll keep listening, but have to pop off.
Thank you. So we will go with John. And by the way, John, of course, as we know, new meseros, and there's a fair amount of people asking about meseros also, how to read meseros, because it's indeed very hard to read meseros. So, John, if you want to go ahead.
Yes. Well, I was thinking in terms of what everyone said, and I'm learning a great deal from our discussion. But I was thinking about how in the strike at the helm speech at the end, Chavez insisted on commune or nothing. And Chris talks about that in his book. But it was really very remarkable. He's saying that this is the only...
Hang on. No. This is a conservative fantasy that is not real. This is one of those times where one little thing happens and conservatives are like, this is it. This is the turning point. This is it. We're winning. We're winning. We're winning. No. After the congressional hearings with the president of Harvard, MIT, and Penn feet being held to the fire, the reckoning of the woke movement has begun. Bro. It doesn't matter. Because every single faculty member, tenured faculty members at Penn, at Harvard, at MIT, at Columbia, at Brown, at Cornell, at the University of Chicago, at every single Ivy League school, every single tenured faculty member, with the exception of maybe one or two, are socialists. In addition to that, socialists fully control the K through 12 schools in a way that is not fixable for at least 2 generations. And 2 generations would be lucky on a good day. Socialists control the news media. Socialists control entertainment. Socialists control the government. Socialists control every institution in your life. Ain't no congressional hearing gonna change that. So I'm very, very sorry. I wish you were correct. I really do. But this is a fantasy. This is like if your car gets a teeny tiny little scratch on it, one that's only visible when you look at it in the right lighting under the right angle. Like teeny tiny, the tiniest fingernail size scratch. That's what you're talking about. No, RDS, you don't need to respond because you're in my fucking house. You either listen or you don't. I'm talking to someone on Rumble right now. You don't need to respond because I promise you, if you do respond and you start arguing with me, you're not going to be here for very long. Either you learned or you didn't. So I'm sorry, guys. Ain't nothing going to happen from those congressional hearings.
Path, the only viable path and strategy in Venezuela, at least, to create a socialism. That and in saying the commune or nothing, he was implicitly saying that the state had to direct its resources to the communes. It had to direct its resources to the population organized on that basis, that communes had to be set up almost like the pores.
Elisa over on Rumble says, so there's no hope at all, then why are we bothering? No, there's no hope at all. I'm going to tell you why there's no hope at all. Because conservative influencers lie to their audiences every single day about what's happening. And so the conservative right is critically underinformed about what is actually going on and what is actually happening. They have no idea how the left is indoctrinating their kids. They have no idea how the left took over their schools. They have no idea what the left is doing. So until the conservative right becomes informed about how the left is actually winning and what the left believes, There is absolutely no hope. If you do not understand your enemy, you will never defeat them. And there is no evidence at this point that conservatives actually understand the enemy that they are fighting, because they listen to horrible, horrible people who lie to them all of the time, but those people tell them things they want to hear that make them feel good, which is why they pay them money to lie to them. Every single time that a conservative influencer says, we're winning the culture war, they're lying to you. If you want to win, you have to understand your enemy. And there is really no one on the internet right now, except for people in my audience, I'm sorry, I'm just going to say it, that actually understand who these people are and what they are doing and how they're doing it. All right, this is another conservative talking point. Tony, I don't recognize you, so I'm going to assume you're new. They preach socialism, but most of them are practicing capitalism. They're allowed to practice capitalism because they live in a capitalist society and they cannot survive if they don't practice capitalism. So they practice capitalism to have resources to overthrow capitalism. They're allowed to. So why are we bothering? Because I want to understand what we're in for. I want to understand the nightmare that we're going to experience when the conservatives really fuck us all over because they never listened in the first place about what was going on. If you don't want to understand the nightmare that we're in for, you're allowed to go back and stick your head in the sand and continuing to listen to Jack Posobiec or Benny Johnson or Charlie Kirk or any of these other bullshit conservative influencers who are lying to you that have no fucking clue what they're talking about. You're allowed to stick your head in the sand. Go ahead.
Of a new society, and the state had a role in this, but it also meant, in a sense, at least for Meseros and I think and Chavez as well, it meant a kind of long-term withering away of the state and creating the communes as another political basis. So this is something that I think is very, very important, and that came up in the discussion that Chris mentioned at the end, the whole issue of the withering away of the state, which doesn't mean eliminating political organization. It means eliminating the state as an alienated body above society, controlling society, and the only way to really create substantive democracy, I think Chavez came to believe, and to create socialism was by basing it in the commune. So I think it's very important to try to think all of that as connected, and that the communes themselves represent a new way of organizing the entire political structure of society. But it can't be a single commune. It can't be a single commune.
Elisa over on Rumble says, can I listen to them and you, and that all of you have important things to say? I mean, you can listen to whoever you want. But I'm telling you that when you're listening to conservative influencers who are telling you, we're winning, pinky swear, bro, we're winning, they're lying to you to get you to pay them money. If you want to listen to them to lie to you so you can hear things that you like, go ahead. It's not my business who you listen to. If you want to pay people money to lie to you and tell you exactly what you want to hear, regardless of if it has any basis in reality at all, you are more than free to do that, because people do it all the time. So, go forth and conquer, I guess. But if you want to know why you're losing, it's because you're paying people to lie to you. Jenny's getting inky with it, says, I wonder if there's a correlation between authoritarian conservatives and those who don't get that socialists don't think like them. Oh yeah, I would say there probably is. Because the thing is that conservatives have a really hard time with abstract thinking. They have black and white thinking. And so yeah, I think that authoritarian conservatives think there is a right and there is a wrong. There is good and there is evil. They don't see things in shades of gray, so they don't understand when people don't see the world like they do. It is literally like impossible for them to process. It is literally impossible for conservatives to process that when socialists say capitalism, they mean private property ownership, because they're like, that's not what capitalism is. Well, it doesn't fucking matter. It doesn't fucking matter. It's what they think it is. They talk about it all the time. So your definition means nothing to these people, but they can't process it. So I don't know what to tell you, Jenny. I agree with you. Queen Beth of the chat, thank you for the super chat. Here's how I look at it. You're giving us information that will help arm us to at least protect ourselves and prepare as much as we're able to. If we don't understand, we have zero chance. Understand your enemy. I agree, Beth. Like, understanding is the first part of this. If you don't take the time to understand the enemy you're fighting, really understand them. Not understand them so you can debunk them, because this is why I outlawed debunking on these streams, because debunking accomplishes absolutely nothing. If you don't understand them, you will never, ever, ever beat them. I appreciate the super chat, Beth. Thank you.
As Chris said, they have to be integrated. It has to be developed as a much larger social project. And this reminds me of how Marx dealt with the Paris Commune. All of these things are brought together, and it's surprising to me that Chavez initiated that call and insisted on Maduro, and particularly carrying it out, and that it actually happened, that the communes did grow in this period. It's very remarkable. And if you looked at the strike at the Helm speech, you will find that Chavez was criticizing the members of the government who were actually hesitating. They were not really buying into his notion of the commune. And so his strike at the Helm speech was really a very frank criticism aimed at the government, speaking to the people, but also looking at the contradictions within the Bolivarian process and state. And that was something that I witnessed, or at least had a sense of, when I was there in 2011 with the government. They weren't all buying into the commune. And maybe the government never really did, but they gave enough resources, enough legitimation to allow populations, the people themselves, to take this into their hands and create something new. So it's a very remarkable process. Thank you.
So we go with Kali. If you want, Michelle also left some questions there for you, or if you want to make any reflection in relation to the interventions by other folks on the panel.
Mute.
Kali, I think you are muted.
Mute.
I said I'm making a request that we have to do this again.
Has to be done.
Because, every question would take some time to really unpack.
Thanks for dropping by, Jim Bob. Nice to meet you.
Well, let me say, I think relative to Michelle's question.
Hang on, I have a Rumble rant over on Rumble Zenanon. Thanks for the education you're providing. Yes, I occasionally give you shit, but I genuinely do appreciate you. Well done, sister. Well, I appreciate the $10. Thank you, Zenanon, for stopping by.
It's I would say our view that the commune and the cooperatives should be distinct and viewed distinctly, but they have to be interconnected. And for us, that I think that we have learned, particularly from elements of our experience through the pandemic, that they have to be both theoretically kind of connected, but then more importantly, practically connected. And the question around social reproduction, like that is key to this permanence that you spoke to earlier, right? And I think John was speaking about how do we make this permanent? A lot of times, the explosion.
How do we make this permanent? social reproduction is the key. Remember, social reproduction is that social systems will reproduce themselves. So if they fundamentally abolish the things that are producing capitalism and they replace them with things that will produce socialism, then the system will reproduce itself.
Of mutual aid and the explosions in the experiments that we see in broad radical kind of communal practices and democratization. One of the reasons that they're not able to sustain themselves for long periods of time because they don't pay adequate attention to these social reproductive questions, right? And it's only really, we would say in our experience, building upon that you can make it permanent, and you have to collectivize that. And a lot of the defaults wind up happening, like when they return back primarily to their kind of quote unquote, I hate that word, but I'm gonna use it in this context, the traditional kind of gendered practice and expression, right? And we're not able to sustain the broad holding of the space of, who's going to take care of the children, who's minding and taking care of the elderly, right? Who is making sure that there's healthcare, there's food production, there's these things that enable us all to participate, right? And to show up and be at our fullest in any engagement. That work is going to have to be done by somebody, and we have to create structures and practices and processes to make sure that that doesn't fall upon the same people who traditionally are excluded to those particular roles and how they've been genderized, throughout the course of, I'm not going to say history, because in no society pre-capitalist era was exactly the same. That sometimes get generalized.
Thank you,
But
Hal.
in
I
this
appreciate it.
more
Merry Christmas.
common
you.
era, the colonial era and the elements of what are now being called the post-colonial era, where there's a more standard dynamic structured around capitalist relations that we all are kind of embedded in.
Hang on. Zachary says, I would rather pay Carlin to tell me the hard truth rather than hear sweet lies. Thank you for your important work in preparing us. Never give up. Listen, guys, I know that I've been talking about quitting lately. Here's what's going to be happening. I'll just tell you guys. So I'm going to be taking a couple of weeks off. I'm going to be taking between RDS. Do not tell me what to do. RDS is getting another 5-minute timeout. If RDS keeps antagonizing me over on Rumble, he's just going to be banned, and that's going to be the way it is. You're not worth it to me, bro. You haven't even sent me a super chat. Why would you think I'd want to keep you around? Like, if you're going to just spam my chat with bullshit. Anyway. So I've been talking about quitting at the beginning of the year, and essentially something has come around that has made it impossible for me to fully quit. I'm just going to say that. I can't fully quit. I'm going to be taking a couple weeks off between the 18th and the end of the year to relax and to regroup. I don't know that I'm going to be writing another book. Maybe, maybe not. No, I wouldn't say it was a Christmas miracle. I would say it was something that made not quitting more enticing to me. But there are probably going to be changes in the new year, and I just want people to be prepared for that. And I don't know what that's going to look like yet, but I do know that I can't keep going the way I am because I'm spending way too much time doing this stuff. And I don't think enough people value my work. I just really don't. I don't think enough people value me. That's not the people here. I can't have the impact that I want to have with the way that things are. So I'm going to be taking a couple weeks off. I'm going to reevaluate. I'm not going to fully quit. I am absolutely not fucking having a child. That is absolutely not happening. No. And there are going to be changes in the new year because I can't keep going the way I'm going, is what it is. So I'm not gonna fully quit. We're gonna have to see how it goes. But you know, it sucks because I wish I could get more people to pay attention. I just can't. So it is what it is. Anyway, there's so more to come on that. I want people to know that that there are probably going to be changes. Thank you, Allison, for the super sticker. I do appreciate it. It says you are amazing for people who can't see it. But I'm not going to fully quit, so there's probably going to be more writing. There's going to be more premium stuff. There's going to be more stuff for my supporters. I don't think Socialism Saturday is going to go away. I don't think my group supporter calls are going to go away. There's just going to be some changes that are going to allow me to have more balance and to not kill myself to do things that people are not valuing. So it is what it is, guys. I wish things were different, but anyway, let's keep going.
And one of the things that we've been trying to like both put in practice and theorize to kind of do some of this operationalize it is what we call the build and fight formula on our end. So I'll just do a little introduction of that. And what we're most interested here is making an argument, primarily to left forces in North America, primarily the United States, and Canada, but further afield, that we kind of have to move out of this kind of deficit mentality and thinking that we don't have enough or there are not enough people involved in the movement, quote unquote. And they ask folks to kind of step back and look at all the things that we are doing that are rooted in concrete practice in regards to mutual aid, in regards to efforts at food security that could lend themselves towards projects of food sovereignty, worker self-organization in various forms, that we have to put those different pieces together. And one of the underscoring things that has to link.
Hang on. Queen Beth says, don't forget there is years of research to peruse on Substack. I haven't even begun to delve into it, and still I have that damn book to finish reading. Yeah, there's a lot of stuff over on my Substack, guys, and I hope to continue building out my Substack. My Substack is my primary content platform. It's not YouTube, it's not Rumble, it's Substack. Substack gets 10 times the views that my YouTube gets because I'm shadow banned on YouTube. But there's a lot of stuff over there. So I would really recommend that people take advantage of all the free content I have out there. I have a ton of it out there. I have tons of archives, stuff like that. And we'll see what 2024 is going to bring. But yeah, anyway, I need more balance. I need more time to myself. And I'm not going to kill myself for people that for things that I don't think are going to work, to be honest. So it is what it is. But I appreciate all of you. I appreciate the supporters of my work. I really wouldn't be able to do it without you guys. There's going to be more in 2024. I think you guys are going to like some of the things I'm going to be doing because I'm going to be freeing up my time in order to work on things that I think are just going to be more valuable. So I appreciate it. Thank you.
Those are very deliberate and intentional practices of social reproduction that form a glue or could form a glue and have to form a glue to enable the liberatory potential of our self-organization around these things to remove us from.
I'm not mad that you guys keep sending in super chats. I just have to keep pausing. Thank you, Milo, for the super chat. In about 16 hours, 1 p.m. Eastern time on Sunday, the world will have its first libertarian president in history sworn into office. Pack the bags for Argentina, baby. By the way, enjoy some time off. You've earned it. Well, because you brought that up, Milo, I want to show you guys. If you head over to the Unwoke art store, which is, of course, unwokeart.com. Let me pop the link in the chat on YouTube and on Rumble. And you scroll down a little ways, you will find my Javier Milei collection, which I'm really proud of. I think it looks great. So if you want to celebrate the first libertarian president in the history of the world, pick up a t-shirt, pick up a sweatshirt or whatever. It says, Viva la Libertad Carajo, which means long live fucking freedom. I'm really excited about it. Please, 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 God, please, God, please let him not fuck it up. Please don't fuck it up, Javier. Please don't fuck it up is all I'm going to say. But I've got all sorts of stuff over on the store if you guys want to check that out. If you don't, that's fine too. But hey, I got a chance to pimp my merch, so why not? I've seen it. That merch looks cool, man. I've seen people wearing it. It looks great. All right, let's get back to it. We have about a half hour left, guys. Let's keep focused.
Capitalist relations of production, particularly those aiming towards the production of commodities, more towards the production of various use values that we can exchange amongst ourselves very intentionally and deliberately, which will require higher degrees of planning. And that is where, for us, one of the core components of this building fight formula or you can call them people's assemblies or kind of planning councils. But those elements are going to be needed in order for us to really realize the potential of the commune. And cooperatives to us, just so folks are clear, cooperatives to us fit into this realm of worker self-organization. And we see that cooperatives are just one form of worker self-organization. There are other forms that have to be utilized in different contexts and in environments, but they have to come together and work in complementary ways. And so one of the pieces that we've been kind of pushing for since our beginning, right, is trying to, in the U.S. context, trying to reunite the labor movement, the trade union movement, with the cooperative movement, and not have them view each other as competitive forces against each other, but things that need to complement each other. And we're trying to push, in particular, trade union movement to think beyond just contracts and working conditions, but to think about how do you democratize, all of the workspaces that we inhabit and have built. How do we democratize those to the fullest and make them common, if not communal property, to be able to move us past capitalist relations of production? But we think that there's a process by how you go about engaging and building these communes. We think that has to kind of start on the local level, but it cannot and must not stay there because, as we know from our experience in the Deep South, facing the terror of white supremacy, those can be easily bombed out if they're not connected and federated in various ways to get us towards new relations and a new system of governance that I think we'll have to move to some degree towards, in phases, towards the withering of the state. I don't think that's going to happen, given our context, kind of automatically, but it's something we're going to have to be very intentional and deliberate about deconstructing at every step of the road.
Yes. Did you hear me on your end?
Yes.
Can I go? Okay. Yes. So now we go with Chris. Any comments, observations?
Sure, I'll try to weave together some comments together, and connect issues. To respond first to Michelle, the first thing about consumption, I think that I can dismiss with that quickly by saying there's only been an index of separation, both in the inside communes, demercantilizing the relation between production and consumption. Some communes, for example, offer products free, put their production to their inside the commune. And sometimes they offer them at what they call solidarious prices. And then there's, of course, different relations to the state. Sometimes the clap bags get distributed, or other state benefits get distributed through the communes. But there's a long way to go there. And likewise, with the relation among communes, there's been this whole effort to make rutas of exchange, circuits of exchange among communes, and that's only incipient. So there's a long way still to go there. It's yet another sense in which the theory is not fully realized. The other thing I wanted to bring up is a more interesting, complicated issue that actually Michelle and I were exchanging emails before the commune before the talk took place. And that's kind of, and to put it in a kind of a cliche sense, it's like part of the dialectic or the debate between spontaneity and strategy. I was interested that she used the word strategy in her presentation just now, but there's a sense in which there's more of an emphasis on spontaneous revolution, the importance of spontaneity, and a certain amount of skepticism, which I understand was actually her work, reading her work on family abolition, that introduced me to this tendency, the Teoria Communes tendency, and the Endnotes. And I guess in the Bay Area, there's a collective called Endnotes that pertains to the same general tendency. They have a great deal of skepticism about what they call programmatization, the way if you do.
Can someone look up the Endnotes collective in the Bay Area, which means San Francisco? I would appreciate. I'm looking at you. Can you find me the Endnotes collective in the Bay Area?
Program, it kind of, as I understand it, becomes a kind of straitjacket. And there's also, it tends to be a kind of like workerist projection of the future. And so the problem is that instead of abolishing the working class as Marx actually wanted, or was his proposal, it ends up being a kind of workerist utopia, which is often a heteronormative or a machista utopia. And in addition to being a work utopia, which is not really the kind of utopia we want to live in. And as I was thinking about this debate we have, or implicit debate, because I do think strategy is necessary and is an important, kind of like a long-term strategy that's in a dialectic relation with spontaneity. I was thinking about a couple of things a couple of arguments that I could put in favor of the importance of strategy, and how it's not the danger of what I understand to be programmatization or the workerist straitjacket is not so, is maybe not, can be avoided and is avoided in reality sometimes.
Yes,
and one of those things is the fact that strategy development, which is I always think that Marxism since about 1970 has been very weak on the question of strategy. And actually, in 1970, there was just kind of a ripple effect of certain debates that happened in the 20s and 30s after there was a kind of a period in which strategy was under considered. But one thing I think is important is that strategy is not, having a socialist strategy is not about having the tablets, 2 tablets or something. It's really about an iterative process of putting forward hypotheses. I was interested by Daniel Ben Said did some work on this, on thinking about the importance of socialist strategy. And the idea of a hypothesis put forward as an experiment, and that's always been central to the Bolivarian process. So their strategies developed through an iterative process, and Chavez liked to say, inventamos or erramos, we invent or we make errors. But in fact, he should have said, we invent and we make errors. So there's a feedback relation. In fact, the communal strategy here evolved out of that kind of feedback, experimenting with state-run projects, and then adapting that to trying cooperatives, and then going to another option that relied more fully on Messaurus's ideas. The other thing I want to say about that is a little bit more perhaps abstruse, and it has to do with my notion about historiography. I think all of us here recognize the importance of appealing to the past in some way or another, the history of struggles. And with my notion of kind of romantic historiography, I understand that relation to be complicated. When you pick up a revolutionary tradition, you're not just it's not mere continuity. It's more like what Walter Benjamin said, a jump. He said the tiger's leap from the past to the present, because bourgeois historiography is always gradualist. And there's also a curious, I would say, surreal effort of the imagination. And when I say surreal, I can explain it in a very pedestrian sense. I think that when Chavez, said Bolivar is going to walk through Bolivar is going to lead us, or he revived different figures from the past, Juana la Avanzadora, Manuela Sanz, and Simon Bolivar. That was essentially a kind of surreal gesture, like waking up from a dream and creating what Walter Benjamin calls a dialectical image. So I think that sense of like a freedom dream, what Robin Kelly calls a freedom dream, that those surreal jumps of the imagination. I actually think that when Lenin said Soviets plus electricity, that was a little bit like the Comte de Lautréamont talking about the sewing machine and the umbrella being hooked together, or even the hammer and sickles, another kind of surrealist coming together of two things. So I think the role of the imagination, the role of an iterative process in developing a strategy can avoid some of these errors that are perceived, or correctly in many cases, by the Teoria Communes tendency. I want to turn to John. John reminded me of the rapidness or the shortcomings of my exposition. In a sense, I talked about the strategy, but I didn't really talk about there is a clear strategy in relation to the state, and it can be laid out with clarity. And that would be saying that Messeros believed that, and it's interesting how this plays out in Corporation Jackson as well, a similar model. You had to make an intervention, a political intervention. You had to take part of the state or take the government over. And then—
Hang on. I see Bo Hillman over on Rumble. Tell me when socialism worked. That's not the point. We've already addressed that. These people believe real socialism has never been tried. Asking the same question over and over and over and over and over again is not going to change that these people believe that real socialism has never been tried. You can keep using a failed strategy if you want, but it's not going to actually change anything.
From there, but the key focus would be reorganizing the social metabolism in the society. And you can't really abolish the state right from the start, because the state, in some very basic sense, the state itself or alienated social relations are an effect of the alienated social metabolism. So there has to be a relatively long process of changing the social metabolism through establishing communal relations. And that's what will lead to the state ultimately being abolished.
Okay.
One thing that John—
I want to talk about something he just said. He said that in order for the state to be abolished, which he means the capitalist state, he means the government as we currently understand it, but that doesn't mean they're not going to replace it with a government of their own. They need to change social relations. This is how they're going to win, guys. They're going to change social relations. They're going to change how people relate to one another. If you want to know why they pushed social emotional learning into schools, it's because they're trying to change social relations from the time people are 5 years old. They're trying to re-architect social relations by pushing social emotional learning into the schools to fundamentally change the ways in which people relate to one another. Another example is 15-minute cities. 15-minute cities are this idea that you can live in a city where everything you need is within a 15-minute walk or public transportation or bike ride, and everything you need is like right there. That is going to fundamentally change social relations. When everything you have is within 15 minutes of where you live, you are going to relate differently to your neighbors. I'm going to give you another example. One of the things they want to do in their 15-minute cities is to push communal canteens, or like the places where you get your food in the middle of that city. What they're trying to do is to force people to leave their private home, their private kitchen, to dine with one another. This might seem like a simple thing, but when you have these communal food areas, the communal canteen, and you're forcing people out of their apartment to dine with one another in the communal food area, you are changing social relations. This is how they're going to win. They're going to architect all of society to fundamentally change social relations within the society. Once they do that, we are effed. And they're doing it using the schools. That's why it was so important for them to take over education. They're doing it starting with your kids when they're 5 years old in the schools. They grow up in this. They don't know anything differently. That's how they're going to win, guys. It's not the library books. It's not the so-called porn and library books that conservatives are obsessed with. It's not the drag queens. It's the re-architecting of social relations. That is how they are going to bring about the Marxist utopia. It is the social relations. Let's listen to that part again.
And it can be laid out with clarity. And that would be saying that Messeros believed that, and it's interesting how this plays out in Corporation Jackson as well, a similar model. You had to make an intervention, a political intervention. You had to take part of the state or takes government over. And then from there, but the key focus would be reorganizing the social metabolism in the society. And you can't really abolish the state right from the start, because the state, in some very basic sense, the state itself or alienated social relations are an effect of the alienated social metabolism. So there has to be a relatively long process of changing the social metabolism through establishing communal relations. And that's what will lead to the state ultimately being abolished. One thing that John said that reminded me of our own experience in Venezuela. He was pointing out how, Chavez died saying "Común o nada," commune or nothing. And it turned out to be right, but it didn't turn out to be right exactly the way he imagined. I think that's part of the dialectic of the history, because in fact, it's because the government, and I'm not criticizing government directly about this, the government in fact turned its back on the communal project for pragmatic reasons. Some people say they were doing a kind of new economic policy, but precisely in the moment in which the commune was reborn with most force, that was the moment in which they were kind of abandoned. And I think that actually is a fascinating thing. Probably some watchers will know about Rebecca Solnit's book, Paradise Built in Hell, which looks at the way disaster situations create mutual aid. And Kali just mentioned that right now, how mutual aid emerges in a crisis situation, but the problem is sustaining it. And so that's exactly what happened here. Right in the worst moment, in the book, I appeal to the saying of Dickens, who wasn't a revolutionary, but he sometimes had apt expressions. He said, "The best of times, the worst of times," is a kind of description of the revolution. And so that's what it was. It was the worst of times and the best of times. It was the worst of times in material sense. Many people died. But at the same time, it was a moment in which mutual aid grew, communes grew. And so now the problem becomes, and that's kind of what one of the things Kali was pointing to, is exactly how do you sustain it? How do you sustain the initial moment, the initial surge? So we were saying sometimes in the past months, we've been saying here, well, we survived the crisis, but how do we survive the recovery?
Thank you, Sin. Appreciate
serious challenges
it.
both ways. One thing I can say about strategy, and this is kind of like the destiny of third world revolutionaries, which is not a small thing, because most revolutions are third world revolutions. They start from the global south. Is precisely the revolution happens both too early and too late. And then there's a moment of stagnation, partly because of imperialism, of blockades and things like that. And that's what, Che confronted that when in the Cuban Revolution, they declared socialism, then encountered enormous obstacles. And so that's kind of the situation we're all in. But I think there's no other way than to, through this iterative process, look for strategies, look for new inventions, inventamos or oramos. And the only thing I'll end with, and perhaps I'm kind of like pulling things in my own interest as far as future investigations, I think that one of the problems people undervalue strategy precisely because they undervalue many people. I'm not saying the people in this panel, both Kali, John, and Michelle gives great protagonism to the global south in her books. Many people undervalue the work that was done on strategy, whether in China or in Venezuela, or in Cuba, as far as the way forward. And so one of the things I think I personally want to devote myself to is attempting to bring to light many of the strategies of socialist construction in the global south.
So now I know everybody must be a little bit tired, but I think we might have time to go over some of the questions that we have from the comments and maybe add some more reflections on each other's talks. So I'm going to read, and maybe I'll even answer or attempt to answer at least one of them, of the questions that we have from our audience. And thank you to everybody who's joining us. There's a very lively discussion on the comment section. So B. Cunningham and Yvonne, they both asked about the issue of tensions, and I think this may relate to the Venezuelan situation, about the issue of tensions between the state, the government, and the communes. Basically, B, who was here in the summer for a brigade with Code Pink, they think that they might have witnessed some contradictions between the state and the communes. So how is that addressed? That would be one of the questions. The other question several people ask about meseros. the folks from Monthly Review attempted to put some links there, but I think YouTube does not allow for links or something. So turn to the Monthly Review page for the books, for the Mesaros books, as well as for Chris Gilbert's books. And finally, folks are asking about currencies and the control of the schools. Currencies that have emerged in the context of the Bolivarian process.
Oh, really?
And the control of schools. Those are some of the questions that people have been asking. So this is a little bit open-ended. We are going to do a little bit kind of like freestyle. I'm going to do again the same kind of rounds. Each one of you 3 minutes, and then I'll perhaps add something at the end. So we'll go with John first. This will have to be pretty short. They will have to be 3 minutes. So John, go ahead.
Muted socialist, muted.
I think you are muted, John.
Sorry. I wanted to indicate how much I've learned from the discussions, and we're operating at different levels of analysis often, and yet it's all very unified from the ground level to the high theory. And I think that what you're seeing is a very comprehensive, critical approach that we've all brought some things to. Somebody asked in the comments what would be a good introductory book by Mesaros. I would recommend his book, The Necessity of Social Change, as the best way into his system. I was talking to him once about how difficult it was for people to read his work, and that we needed to create a book that was an introduction to his work, and that was how we did The Necessity of Social Change. So I would highly recommend that, and it is a good theoretical basis for a lot of things we're talking about, but ultimately these issues have to be approached at the ground level. And what I find is most valuable is how Chris's book has given us the history of the concrete struggles. And in terms of that, and of course, we're learning about Cooperation Jackson, which is something I've admired for a long time as well. And it's nice to see this is a concrete struggle over racial capitalism in the United States that offers hope. So we have a lot of work here and to rely on. And I would love to see Chris go on to write a book on all of the socialist strategies in the third world. I can't imagine anything more important today.
And we go with Kali.
Well, I'm just sitting there. I'm sorry, I was taking some notes. I'm learning a lot myself, and a lot to follow up on. But I can tell you from our experience that there are going to be contradictions, between our communes and experiments in the state, even when those states are allied or favorable. Again, that are rooted in are different, both locations relative to trying to deal with all of the impacts and effects of capitalism, and how the state projects, even on a municipal level, that we've been dealing with and help to occupy over various periods of time, which is going to come into different contradictions with it, right? It's a different set of interests, a different overall kind of relations that they have to deal with, and what we have to deal with on the ground, right? So that should be anticipated. I think it's a deeper question that we're going to have to figure out, both theoretically and practically, like how do we deal with these contradictions in a way that we can continue to press the state to work in the favor of our processes, communal processes, without either consuming them or undermining them, right? And I don't think
Thank you.
we don't have an answer to that particular question just yet. We are constantly experimenting with that. And how we've been, kind of moving the last couple of years is to just say we recognize that there is a space and a role that our comrades, who are occupying the government kind of offices that they have to play. And then there's a role that we have to play. And that one of the things that we have the obligation is to continue to push them to move towards the various, practices we think are necessary to abolish the various systems of oppression. And so that is kind of what we've been concentrating on. What is our particular role relative to moving this particular dynamic?
And we go back with Chris.
Yeah, I guess to pick up a little bit on the question of, I think that one of the main interests about contradictions is with regard to the state. And maybe I can try to just give a breaking news, talk about a breaking news, because that's all I can say is that's one of the key issues. And one thing that's emerged recently in the communes is the question of, actually, we sitting down together began to talk to communards about just applying a theoretical framework that has existed for 100 years almost now, what Preobrazhensky called primary socialist accumulation.
Primary socialist accumulation? All right. Mountain Goddess, thank you for the super chat. Mountain Goddess says, Carlin, because of this channel and Substack, I can sort of spot these people through convos now. Thank you. That's actually part of the point. And so I really appreciate you saying that, because part of the reason we do Socialism Saturday is I want you guys to be able to hear these people. I want you to be able to hear how they talk. I want you to be able to spot them when they show up in the real world, because if you listen to them over and over and over again, you will be able to spot socialist when it shows up in the real world, and that's when it gets really, really scary. So I do appreciate it. Thank you so much, Mountain Goddess. It does work. Yeah, these are the people in Antifa. Yes, these are Antifa, 100%. All right, guys, we have about 7 minutes left. We're almost done. We're almost there. Thank you for hanging in for a long Socialism Saturday, but we got a lot out of it. Let's wrap this up and, hang in there. This is our training. We do this whether we like it or not, because these people want to bore you into not listening to them, and that's why we have to listen to them, because they don't want you to listen to them.
And that's become a debate in the two most powerful communes right now. And for listeners, primary socialist accumulation is based on the idea that some people say that Marx imagined that arguably, for much of Marx's career, he imagined the revolution would take place in the so-called developed or the overdeveloped countries. And in fact, that didn't happen. So that means that revolutions tend to take place in countries that are short on productive forces. And there becomes an issue of how to develop those productive forces, which, according to maybe an orthodox view, would have been developed under capitalism, under a developed capitalism. So Preobrazhensky and Bukharin debated this 100 years ago, and it's actually quite a lively debate right now in Venezuela. And in Venezuela, of course, the terms are very transformed, because historically, Preobrazhensky proposed with a kind of impressive clarity and elegance that the only way to do primary socialist accumulation would be to expropriate the peasants. And Bukharin had a more complex view of things, which I would just call it could be summarized perhaps muddling through using different forms of approaching the issue without this elegant and drastic expropriation of the peasants. And so right now that's being played, but as I say, the terms are changed, because here the historic idea is close to Preobrazhensky, but instead of the peasants funding the commune, the way to do it would be to the oil rent. The oil profits should be directed to the communes, and so that will come through the state and the state oil company. But on the other hand, that presents. So the debate was realized here, and just last night we were talking to some communards about how they're actually thinking of some kind of mixed solution to reduce their dependence on the state, and returning once again to a kind of small cooperatives that would be kind of satellite cooperatives around the commune, which would have communal production and its main centers of production, but there would be kind of like satellite cooperatives that would be part of this effort at socialist accumulation, more of a muddling through sort of issue. So all I can say is these are really lively debates. One can say, sometimes when I think about the revolution, you can think it's very exciting. Sometimes you can also think of, I remember Roque Dalton, the Salvadorian poet, said that the revolution was a giant headache and the communism would be a giant aspirin. So sometimes it can seem like a headache, but one hopes that the communism will bring us the giant aspirin. No. In fact, following a revolution is a fascinating experience and a nutrifying theory. And of course, it's, as Chavez said, it's the comuna nada, because there's of course an existential dimension to this. Because if we don't build a communal society, or what John, if we don't succeed in entering the communion age, we will probably face planetary destruction.
Well, folks, I think that we finished. I think we finished on a very few wonderful interventions. I just very quickly, because of some of the questions, somebody was asking about currencies. Two communes have had currencies: El Panal commune in Caracas and the Che Guevara commune in Mérida, and they were both successful for a brief period of time. But of course, we live in a society that's still a capitalist society. In fact, Chavez often reminded us that we still have a bourgeois state in Venezuela. And that, of course, creates all sorts of contradictions, which comes to the questions that some of you were already answering, and I won't go into it. But the fact is that given that we still have a bourgeois state, then the struggle is still ongoing, right? So there's a government that's sympathetic, but sometimes more pragmatic, sometimes less pragmatic. There are contradictions between the communes and the state, and I guess the goal is to make the communal project hegemonic to overcome these contradictions. And at this moment, well, since 2017, as Chris was saying, since 2017, the communes have been definitely growing, which is really extraordinary. You know, like in the worst of times, when the US blockade really made our lives really, really horrendous, that's when communes kind of like picked up once again. So, but the truth is that so these communes reemerge, but we still have to build a referent that will be hegemonic in our society. There's actually, I would say, a relatively small percentage of the Venezuelan society that is communalized. That's something that somebody was asking in the questions as well. So I'm looking to see if there's any other questions that should be urgently addressed. Somebody else was asking, it was actually a question for Cali, because he mentioned Afro-Venezuelan communities. Those are Black communities in Venezuela. That's what he was referring to, I think. And yeah, and people keep asking about mesaros. In addition to reading the books from Monthly Review, in Chris's book, there's a chapter that's called Mesaros and Chavez, the philosopher and the llanero. So that's also kind of like a reading, theoretical reading from Venezuela and from the actual existing practice of Chavez's influence on mesaros. So I think we will leave it there, because it's been a long evening, but very. I'm really happy. I think we've had a very good conversation, and as Kelly was saying, I think we should do it. We should do it again, and I should not fail to thank Kate and the people who have actually been helping us with making today's space possible, in addition to Monthly Review. So any very short last words from?
Oh shit. I didn't mean to reload that. That was not what I meant to. Okay. It was basically done anyway. We're not going to go to their last. It was basically done anyway. That was my bad. I really didn't mean to do that, but it was basically done anyway. I have one last super chat from Jenny's getting icky with it. Thank you, Jenny. Mississippi is a red state, so no one can claim this won't affect them because of where they live. And come what may in New Year, thank you for making listening to 100+ hours of this stuff bearable. Well, I do try my best, and I don't think we're going to give up Socialism Saturday in the new year, but we will see where this journey takes us. We will see. All right, guys, that concludes our episode of Socialism Saturday for today. Now, as a reminder, I don't usually stream on Sunday. I'm not planning on streaming tomorrow. I have done enough streaming this week, but I will be on my Substack. What I will be doing is I will be starting to release the findings from the National Sex Ed Conference that we infiltrated for 20+ hours over the last several days. And if you weren't part of it, I know I have some people in the chat that basically sat and listened to the whole National Sex Ed Conference with me. We learned a lot of stuff. There was a lot of crazy stuff. I'm going to start releasing clips on the Substack. So if you are not yet on the Substack, you can head over there. Carlyn, KARLYN.substack.com. Please feel free to support the work I'm doing if you would like to see it continue for $8 a month, $80 a year. There are special benefits to supporting my work on Substack, which includes 2 Zoom calls with me every single week. It includes access to my supporter Discord. Tomorrow, we will be doing movie night in my supporter Discord. I think we're watching Trading Places. I don't know. It's some movie that Jennifer has confidence in. We do movie night every Sunday at 8 p.m. in my supporter Discord. Come and hang out with us, watch a movie. Maybe you've seen it, maybe you haven't seen it. We do movie trivia. It's generally a really fun time. You get access to that tomorrow, and the way you find access to that is every week I send out an email that looks a little bit like this. It's called the Unwoke Roundup email. Not that one, because that was noise. But I will be sending out an email that looks like this tomorrow. In that email, you will get links to the supporter Discord. You will get links to Zoom calls. You will get all of your supporter perks in this email. If you are a supporter on another platform, I will post the information there. But I do prefer, if you're going to support the work I'm doing, please make sure you're supporting on my Substack. That is the place where I'm really trying to grow my audience, because that is my primary content platform on the internet. Lots of great stuff coming this week. I also want to remind everyone that for another 2.5 hours, you will be able to get the Trump Indictment Victory Tour design for 25% off, which is a discount that I never do, but we're doing it for 24 hours only until midnight tonight. You will be able to get the iconic Trump Indictment Victory Tour design on t-shirts, on sweatshirts, on hoodies, on bags, on posters, on I even have a tumbler. Check this out. We've got Trump on the front, and then on the back of the tumbler is all of Trump indictments. You can only get this in the Unwoke Art Store. You can even get it on wrapping paper. Imagine giving your Trump deranged friend a present wrapped in the Trump Indictment Victory Tour wrapping paper, which you can only get on unwokeart.com. 25% off until midnight tonight, when it changes over to another design, the last design of the 25% off flash sale. And then you can always, of course, pick up other merch in the Unwoke Art Store as well. I have lots of cool stuff. All of it goes to support the work I'm doing. I really do appreciate it. Guys, I'm taking tomorrow off from streaming, but I will be back on Monday. I hope some of you will join us for movie night tomorrow evening. That's all we have for today. Take care, and we'll see you guys soon. Bye.